Your Worship.
Got to have the mic on. My apologies. Good evening and welcome to the public hearing of council pertaining to bylaw number 21-08. It is being held March 17th, 2021 at 7:01 p.m. This public hearing is held pursuant to the Municipal Government Act, RSA 2000, Chapter M-26, and amendments thereto. I hereby declare the public hearing related to bylaw number 21-08 now open at 7:01 p.m. And council, may we have a motion to adopt the public hearing agenda?
I can move that.
Thank you. We have a motion from Councillor Montgomery to adopt the public hearing agenda. And I'll call the motion. All in favor? And that motion is carried. Legislative Services.
Thank you, Your Worship. Bylaw 2108 is for 7 locks in Lakewood to modify the version of the R1S district to allow for duplexes. Public notices for bylaw 2108 were published in the Strathmore Times on February 24th and March 3rd, 2021. On February 26th and March 4th, 2021, notification of the upcoming public hearing was posted on the town's Facebook page and also on the town's website.
Once again, the following rules of conduct will be followed during the public hearing. Presentation should be brief and to the point and shall be limited to 3 minutes in length. The order of presentation shall be the administration, then those in favor of the bylaw, those opposed to the bylaw, any other person deemed to be affected by the bylaw. Council may ask questions of the speakers after each presentation for clarification purposes, and there will be no debating the bylaw. To date, there are no letters of support and none opposed have been received. Does the administration have any comments? Chuck Proctor is here. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you, Your Worship and members of council. I've got a brief presentation for you this afternoon, or this evening, I guess. So I got basically 4 chapters that I'm going to talk about. I'm just going to go over the background, some amendment information, some information about the duplex product that's being proposed, and our recommendation. So just a bit of background. This is the location that we're dealing with today. It's in Lakewood Meadows in Strathmore. This is the northwest corner of town. That top road there is North Boundary Road. And the area in red there is the lots that we're talking about today. So just a bit of background. In 2020, these lots were originally designated as a mix of R1S, that's the low density single detached dwelling narrow, R1N, the low density single detached residential narrow lot, and the R1S, the low density small lot district. The R1S and R1N districts are similar. There's some subtle differences between them. The R1N can be slightly wider. They list duplexes as a discretionary use, and they don't require a rear lane. The R1S, on the other hand, can be slightly narrower. They require a rear lane, and they don't list duplexes as a use. And a duplex is something that can be described as a building containing 2 dwelling units with one above the other. So that was in 2012 when those lands were originally designated. In 2014, we adopted a new land use bylaw, and the R1S lots were not updated in Lakewood despite there being no rear lanes in the neighborhood. The developer has informed the town that there is an interested party in building duplexes on 5 vacant lots that are designated R1S in Lakewood. The town's tools haven't been perfect, and Development Services are proposing an in-house amendment to the land use bylaw to solve this problem. So the bylaw before us tonight, bylaw 2108, proposes to amend the land use bylaw by creating a direct control district similar to the R1S district. 7 lots in Lakewood are proposed to be included in the direct control. 5 are proposed to have small 10-meter tall duplexes on them. The legal addresses are there, and these are on vacant lots in Lakewood. The summarized changes basically are this direct control district will include duplexes as a permitted use, The rear yard setbacks can be reduced from 7 meters to 5 meters. Side yard setbacks reduced from 1.5 meters to 1.2 meters, and there's no rear lane required in the neighborhood. So again, just some more information on the amendment. We aren't changing any lot sizes. Building code, Alberta Building Code still applies. The 2 south lots that you see there, number 8 and number 4, Lakewood Mews, are included for setback consistency on the block. These parcels are adjacent to high density in Lakewood, and they're currently vacant. So just an overview, kind of what it would look like if these lots are posted on these vacant lots, kind of a little plot plan overlay there for everybody's information. And just some more information about the duplex product. So this is a structure that has a maximum height of 10 meters. They have a wheelchair accessible ground floor unit. They've got 4 on-site parking stalls and an external covered staircase which goes up to the 2nd story unit. And just a little bit more zoomed in version of the product there, if everybody can see. So our recommendation tonight, subject to the consideration of the information given at the public hearing, that we give 2nd and 3rd reading to the bylaw. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chuck. Does council have any questions for clarification for Chuck tonight? Councillor Montgomery?
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Chuck, for the report. Something that occurred to me recently was that, it's tough for me to, I guess, look at, a change in, what the developer wants to do essentially, and to say, that's a good idea or a bad idea. But what occurred to me was that, what I do care about is that the town is not put into a position in the future where the tax dollars for that area are not covering the cost of the services essentially that are used for that area. So, whether it's, snow clearing or other, services like that. So what I would appreciate, and I guess I would appreciate it with this, but, just going forward, an analysis of what the change in, let's say, land use is going to do to the tax revenues. And even some analysis or extrapolation about the cost of services into the future that, this area will use. And then just to prove or just to demonstrate basically that that the tax, that essentially, and I'm not saying that they're doing this, but essentially that, the developer isn't, creating a product where the rest of the town is going to end up having to subsidize the services in that area. So if you want to comment on that, that'd be great. And if administration wants to comment on the possibility of being able to do that in the future, that'd be great. Thank you.
So, Councillor Montgomery, is your question then, will there be property tax benefits that can be applied then to the services in this area? Is that what I'm trying to hear or try to?
Well, I'll give you an example. For instance, with Strathaven, for instance, there was decisions made that, allowed the developer to essentially create a product where, there's no storm water, system in that area. And that allowed them to, sell the product for, a lower price than other neighborhoods in town, essentially. But what has happened, as we know, is that, now we have to go and do snow removal in that area, which costs the rest of the town. The rest of the town is essentially subsidizing, the snow management for that area. And so it occurred to me that, we don't want to create more situations where essentially the developer is able to, get a competitive advantage, let's say, by expecting the services to be subsidized in the future, essentially. So, in this case, I imagine that, we might even see more tax dollars, if they're kind of increasing density. But I just would like a comment from administration in the future about what the implications are on the taxes, on tax revenues. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I wasn't questioning you, Councillor Montgomery. I was just trying to figure out exactly what question you were hoping to get addressed. And so you just want to make sure that there are property taxes that will go towards services, and are the services put in this area that will be of use to all residents in that area, that we have the proper services? Is that where you're at?
Well, so I almost like, when administration is looking at an area structure plan, for instance, like initially, like I would hope that they would be doing some sort of analysis to ensure that the tax revenues generated from the proposed housing types will cover the cost of the services for that area. And so I guess, even if it's like when they're kind of, showing us a change like this, if they could just say, hey, yeah, like this is going to increase the tax revenues in this area, or this will decrease the tax revenues in this area, at least just so we know, what we can expect as far as the change in tax revenues.
Okay, thank you. Chuck, I'm not sure if you're able to, but do you feel confident in the property tax that will come in from these duplexes? And are we comfortable with the services that will be provided in that subdivision?
Thank you, Your Worship. I think administration is comfortable with the property taxes and services coming into this one. I know that we have some other speakers tonight. One of the developers might be able to talk about specifically kind of what they anticipate the construction value and maybe some of the assessment value on these houses too tonight, if that would help Councillor Montgomery's question too. Thank you.
Thank you, Chuck. Councillor Peterson?
Thank you, Worship. My question to Mr. Proctor or to anyone interested, my question is on the 0.4 on-site parking stalls, and I was just wondering if this impacts the land use bylaws in terms of removing minimum parking requirements, or how you see that rolling out. I recognize that we are not Calgary, and so we don't have, we're not a community of 50 or 70,000, so we don't have the same kinds of restrictions or necessity to look at it in the same way. But I'm hearing Werner Fisher's voice in my head about 10 by 12 width or 9 by 12 width parking stalls that are 10 to 20 feet long. And so I'm just asking for some clarification or elucidation on the 0.4 parking stalls and the capacity for accessibility and usefulness around that.
Thank you, Councillor Peterson. Part of this amendment was existing duplexes in Strathmore require 2 on-site parking stalls per unit, and we've made no changes to the requirement there. We're just treating this like another duplex as we would in Strathmore. We're trying to get on-site parking stalls so that there isn't a problem created with on-street parking stalls. So the developer has done his best to meet the existing requirements of the rules for duplexes in this case. I hope that answers your question. Thank you, Councillor Peterson.
Yeah, it does. Thank you very much. And just in response, I think that the information that you've given to us here on both the amendment information and land use bylaws, extremely helpful. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Councillor Peterson. Chuck, I have one easy question. I think it's on page 5 of 21, where you have the schematics and the front view of the duplex. That drawing, or the colored one of the front part of the duplex, is that one half? Is that the right half of what you would see as far as the duplexes go? I'm trying to visualize how it would look. Thank
you, Your Worship. That's a good question. So these are up-down duplexes, so we're seeing it from the front, so you're kind of seeing the whole thing. I guess if you got a color agenda there, the darker gray is kind of represents maybe the bottom unit, and the lighter gray represents the upper unit there.
And then my second question, based on your answer, is are you folks comfortable with the aesthetics of the duplex in regards to the other homes that are in that immediate area of the subdivision?
Thank you, Your Worship. Another good question. I think that we're comfortable with the aesthetics with the proposal here, and I know that we have 2 people that are wanting to speak in the public hearing too, that can kind of speak to the product that they want to build and talk about. But I think as my department's concerned, we're happy with the aesthetic, and this looks like a product that is appropriate for these lands, and we're just excited to hear the other feedback tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Chuck. Councillor Peterson, did you have a follow-up question? Okay, thank you. Any other questions from councillors for Chuck? Seeing none, then we'll move on. Is there anyone present who supports the bylaw who wishes to speak? Seeing none. Is there anyone? Oh,
Yeah, sorry.
oh,
Hello?
sorry. Scott. Welcome,
Yes.
Scott.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. We are here because we are obviously in support of this, as noted. We have engaged with our residents. We have spoken with them. We do actually have letters of support as well. As we do with everything in Lakewood, it is quite engaging with the community. The idea of the product, as you mentioned, the side-by-side, the idea being is to have it stacked so there's one on top of the other, to not interfere with the streetscape. So it still looks like a single-family home. And that's really part of the desire from the builder of the product itself. Thank you. If any questions, feel free to ask.
Thank you, Scott. Deputy Mayor Cox.
Thank you, Your Worship. Scott, hi Neil, hi Scott. My question is the 4 parking stalls. So when we look at the picture of it, it looks to me like there's a garage for 2 and then one behind for the other 2 vehicles. Is that how it's going to look?
Hello, Mayor Fuel and members of council. I'm Neil Coulter. I'm with the developer, and thank you, Councillor. So, we have out of this, there's 4 parking stalls, and what we have is if you zoom in on those actual vehicles, they're SUVs. They're not just cars. We've oversized those a little bit so that we know we're going to have adequate space for 4 vehicles. The garage, which goes into the lower unit, is handicap accessible. So it's going to be wider, and then you'll see that the cars are sitting sort of to the side of it, and then 2 towards the street. Does that answer your question?
That's okay, Deputy Mayor Cox?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Then I'll ask, is there anyone present who opposes the bylaw who wishes to speak? And seeing or hearing none, we'll move on. Is there anyone present deemed to be affected by the bylaw who wishes to speak? Seeing none, do the councillors have any further questions? Thank you. And I hereby declare this public hearing for bylaw number 20-24 closed at 7:19 p.m. and will accept a motion to adjourn it. Councillor Peterson?
So move, Your Worship.
Thank you. We have a motion to adjourn the public hearing, and I'll call the question. All in favor? And I'll adjourn the public hearing. Thank you, everyone. And thank you, Chuck and administration. This brings us to presentations and recognitions. We have none tonight, and that brings us to item 5, delegations. The first one we have canceled as part of adopting the amended agenda. And we move now to 5.2, Scott Silva, Lakewood Development Park. Is that correct? Lakewood Development, the park, Scott?
Correct, Your Worship.
Thank you.
Sorry, my apologies. If I'm to lead, just let me know if I'm not.
Yeah, we're all ready, and you're up.
Sounds good. Thank you. What was interesting about how all this came together, and I think councillors have seen it. We supplied it with the document. We're proposing a public park, Brave Park. Brave Park was really founded or conceived as of late December 2020, and not so much, and also in a bad time when we had a tragic passing of Sergeant Harnett. The idea of Brave Park kind of comes from the beginning, with our roots as far as John Palliser, when really settling the lands here in Strathmore. The commonality between, our first settlers, our First Nations, is really quite comparable to a lot of our emergency services and frontline workers. Here in the community, especially in not only Lakewood, but mainly in Strathmore and surrounding areas, our first responders and frontline workers are those that are, voyaging into uncharted territories, much as our settlers did. Part of the idea of this park is really to pay honor to these heroes, these pillars of our community. We spend so much time giving them appreciation and recognition, but we don't really have, I shouldn't say we don't really have, a place for everybody to really congregate, to focus on, and something positive right now. With what's happening during COVID, with what happened with, again, as I mentioned, our emergency services workers, a place really to bring everyone together. And that's where Brave Park was conceived. I'll leave it open for questions. I know there's going to be a couple here, so definitely, by all means, I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you for your presentation as well as the handout that was in our agenda. Questions from councillors for Mr. Silva concerning Brave Park, the concept, the idea? Oh, sorry, Deputy Mayor Cox.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Scott. I'm looking at your costs for Brave Park, but in the costs, I don't, the playground equipment is considered, it's in with the landscaping. So are you telling me that if we were to go ahead with the Brave Park playground portion, you're looking for $183,750?
Scott?
Yeah, I can answer that question. Thank you, Mayor Fuel and Deputy Mayor Cox. So what we did was we've got two estimates. We've got an estimate from a playground equipment supplier, and they do most of the playgrounds in and around Calgary. So he's given us a stage one cost for playground equipment. And it's coming in at around $158,000. Playground equipment is very expensive, we're finding out. So that would give us sort of the general stuff that we need to attract new residents to Lakewood and to keep our current residents there. The kids are out on a daily basis throwing rocks at each other for their enjoyment right now. And then the other $50,000 would be the base. The base is very, very, it's expensive because of the materials that you need and what you need underneath that equipment. So then what we would do is moving into our next phases, we would different stages of the playground equipment to make it more adaptable to the current condition. Meaning we don't know what playground equipment is going to look like moving forward through COVID. And what's programmable playgrounds going to look like, programmable municipal reserve. So that's why we've just got a stage one right now.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Cox. Does that answer your question? I have Councillor Peterson and then Councillor Sobel.
Thank you, Your Worship. So just to go back through that, the stage one doesn't necessarily mean that you're planning on doing it all at once. It still could be staged gradually. Correct?
Yes, that is correct. That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Your Worship, I really do see this as a beautiful undertaking, and I think that it's revolutionary in that it would be the first and perhaps only tactile representation in our community marking the pandemic. And I think that's going to be really, really important. And its inception is important on, it's not, definitely our loss of our frontline workers and definitely with the recent loss of Policeman Harnett. And but I think it's also important to recognize and immortalize frontline workers and the ultimate sacrifices that were made, and the 18 people and hopefully no more that have been lost in our own community. And I think about the 1918 to 1923 pandemic and how, as a history teacher, the only place that's marked in our community is in our graveyard, and that's a shame in a way. And so I see this as an opportunity to celebrate and lift up the resilient in our community. And I really champion the whole concept that you've put forward. And I see opportunity for other organizations such as healthcare workers and teachers and our WADEMSA and our firefighters and municipal workers and others to all contribute through fundraising efforts into the future in being able to build this park. And we all know that playgrounds are really important, but we've also seen schools raise all the money toward it. And I think this community is very capable of doing that exact same thing. And I think going forward, you're going to see tremendous support for this from the community. And I really applaud what you've put together. I think it's really revolutionary and it's wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Peterson. I have Councillor Sobel, followed by Councillor Bauer.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, gentlemen, for the presentation. And certainly, it's an interesting concept and one I very much support as well. So, two quick questions. One is in regards to getting back to playground equipment that's located on our page 8 of our agenda at a cost of $183,000. I just want to be clear as to, does anybody know what's involved in this? What the equipment is?
Yep. Go for it. No, by all means.
Neil?
Yeah, we can send you. They've already designed that.
Okay.
Yeah, so we could forward that on to council for sure.
Okay, and further to Councillor Cox's line of questioning. So I'm just a little confused here as to what is there an ask involved with this presentation?
Thank you, Councillor Sobel. Yes, there is an ask within this presentation. We are asking, as this is a public space, and we are looking to bring together so many different elements, the military, the police, the RCMP, everybody, and that's part of what we're doing on the background and we have been doing. But we are asking for and looking for public funding for the park.
In the amount of $410,000?
As it is right now, we've got some options to look at, but that is where we're looking at for the entire cost for the park itself, which includes the programmable fields, which are to be set, of course, depending on outcome of usage, as dictated by council.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sobel. Thank you, Councillor Bauer, and then Deputy Mayor Cox.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just want to say thank you to Scott and Neil for your presentation and your outline in our agenda package. I really applaud you for this innovative idea and a creative solution to bring people together. I really echo what Councillor Peterson has been saying about this really being revolutionary. And, we haven't seen this kind of thing in Strathmore. We've had community playgrounds that have been attached to schools, and we've had parks in communities that service the people around, but they don't have this type of theme. And I really see this as an opportunity to reach out to so many different stakeholders in our community. And I see that the real potential here. I am having difficulty, however, visualizing the space. So if you could please just give me an idea based on either a playground that is currently available in Strathmore that would be about like or same size, or if you could just even tell me how many feet or acres this playground would be, and then have you separated it, the programming part, if that wasn't done, or if that was done in kind of a phase 2, how much money would that take off the $410,000?
Thank you, Councillor Bauer. If need be, I can also share a screen here that'll help reference what we're talking about right now. So here within the park, can everyone see my cursor?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
This entire space here is 3 acres in size. What we're proposing to do is have the playground equipment and everything off into this section of the park, with the monument and the statue being here almost front and center. The idea being is the rest becomes the programmable space that we'll be able to work with the town and obviously the community in figuring out how that looks. But ultimately the playground is proposed to be back here where it's quite accessible to a lot of the homes, both joined by a pathway on this side, a pathway here. And then the idea being is the actual monument, which you see here as an example. As you see here, some of the examples where we are actually looking at keeping some of number one, sorry, this is a locally designed product. Everybody that we have involved in this is all locally sourced. The production, the manufacturing, design, the contractors, everybody is. But this is some of the concepts of what we're looking to have the monument, and that is up to over 12 feet tall posts. So very substantial, and that plays into the idea of the pillars of the community, because that's what each and every one of these individuals are for us. So just to give you a little bit more background, I hope that answers the question.
So then the park itself would be about a half an acre, you said, where the playground equipment would be.
Correct. It would be about half an acre, give or take a little bit, yeah.
Okay, so if we were to look at that final cost, that 410, what would we be able to take out for the programmable space so that we could just get the price for building the playground and the pathway and grading the playground space? So I'm kind of looking at this as a phase 1, phase 2 approach so that I can get it in more of a bite-sized amount that maybe we can afford.
Yes, thank you very much for the question, Councillor. We're probably in and around, we've got a lot of space there, and this is all part of our next phase. This is phase 2, so this will be subdivided and dedicated to the town at that point. So we could probably look at doing, about a third. So we're looking at, maybe that 183,750 for the general landscaping with the landscaping, architecturals, and playground equipment. We could probably get that half acre in, pretty much complete for that. We wouldn't have any of the irrigation for the rest of for the property and things like that. But we could probably, get our paving, the pathway down into there. We're probably pretty close, in around that $200,000.
Okay, so then I just would like to kind of piggyback on what Councillor Peterson said, which is if we were able to reach out to other organizations such as WDEMSA or the RCMP or other frontline service worker staff or employers to contribute for the park, if this council was to approve this in concept only, would that allow you to go to those organizations and ask for contributions?
Thank you, Councillor Bauer, for that question. You are definitely headed in the right direction. Part of what we're doing is to get the support. We were reaching out in preliminary fashion to some of these additional organizations to help fund the balance and what we see as some of the involvement in the future. But definitely having the town involved does help us take that next step. But what we see though is so much more than just this part, so much more than just these programmable fields where we'll actually be able to put up eventually plaques, places to commemorate fallen loved ones, fallen frontline workers. And that's something that we're looking at taking on as well. So beyond where we are right now, yes, there's many further opportunities just by having the town look at this in concept and take the next steps.
Thank you so much, Scott and Neil.
Thank you, Councillor Bauer. I have Deputy Mayor Cox and then Councillor Peterson and then Councillor Montgomery. Actually,
Thank
we'll
you.
go, sorry, we'll go Deputy Mayor Cox. Would you be okay if Councillor Montgomery spoke first since he hasn't asked?
Absolutely. And I don't need to speak again.
Okay.
I got a couple of answers. Thanks.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Councillor Montgomery.
Thank you, Your Worship. And thank you very much for the presentation, Scott and Neil. I just have a question for administration. That is, what is the normal process when a developer is building a new neighborhood and there's park to be developed?
Sorry, are you asking that of administration then, Councillor Montgomery? Okay,
yes, administration, please.
Jim?
Yeah, sorry, could you repeat that? I didn't quite hear it all.
The question is just what is the normal process that, historically in Strathmore that developers, undertake when developing a playground or park space?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through to Councillor Montgomery. It's my understanding that developers are expected to install the first playground in their development, and second and third playgrounds would possibly be considered financially, contributing to it financially by the town. But it is expected in the past that the developer would construct and pay for the first playground.
Okay.
Could I piggyback on yours, Councillor Montgomery, and then come back to you? Is there ever a price value that's attached to that first playground? And then I'll go to Councillor Montgomery.
Mr. Mayor, not to my knowledge. I'm not aware that there was a specific price, but it would normally be part of the initial phase 1 development.
Thank you. Councillor Montgomery?
Thank you. So I guess another question I have is this something where, I like the idea of the park, and I think I understand where these gentlemen are coming from, so I'm wondering if this is something where we can and we have. I guess where I'm coming from is, I know in the past that, the town has, done something basically called front-ending costs where, we'll put up money for a developer to complete some part of their development. And then, that's paid back over, like essentially, through offsite levies almost, but just over, as they sell houses, they pay that back. And I'm wondering if that's something, and this is a question to administration, is that something that we could look at doing for this?
Mr. Legore?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. Administration could bring a report back to council detailing how we can handle this request for funding.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all I have.
Thank you, Councillor Montgomery. Councillor Peterson and then Councillor Bauer again.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to say to the developers and proposal on this park that I know with community involvement that this is definitely doable. I've, like most teachers, sat on playground committees several times, and the price is very commensurate with anything that I've ever worked on in the past. And parents in a community generate all kinds of enthusiasm. And I just see the question I have is, I'm assuming you're planning on forming some sort of a community-based committee around this proposal.
Thank you, Councillor Peterson. Actually, yes, we've already started the preliminary steps of that with engaging with the residents. So as we start to move through that, we've got some very vocal people and people that we love having involved in Lakewood, which is just about everybody. So yes, we are definitely going to be undertaking that too.
I really thank you. I really commend the work that you've done in your Lakeview community. I see their involvement in the community everywhere. And it's a credit to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you, Councillor Peterson. Councillor Bauer.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have a motion that I'd like to propose. I move to support the proposed Lakewood Development Brave Park in concept and encourage Lakewood developments to come back to council after community consultation.
Thank you for that motion. Now that we have a motion on the floor, is there any discussion on the proposed motion? Councillor Sobel and then Deputy Mayor Cox.
Thank you, Your Worship. And bless you. I love the concept, and my only issue with the motion is that I'm not there yet. I just don't have enough information yet. I want to know what I need more detail on what the park is consisting of. The phase one sort of brings a whole bunch of question marks. How many phases are there? What is in mind for phase one? What's the time frame that's in mind for phase two, phase three, phase four, whichever that may be? So I'm not going to support this bylaw, this motion, not because I don't like the concept, but I need more information from the developers as to what the long-term plans are, and perhaps something in writing as to where we're going from here. What is the plan? I mean, we're in the last 20 minutes, council and you folks have been working together to develop a plan. But I want to know. I'd like to see this in writing, and something that I can get my eyes upon and have a very good idea as to how we're going forward on this. What percentage of the end cost you're hoping to raise, what percentage you're putting in, what percentage you're looking from council. I don't think those answers are out there yet, and I'm not sure if you folks know that or not, but I certainly don't see that stuff in front of me. So I won't be supporting this particular motion, but I'm not discouraging this concept and this project from going up. I just think it's got to come back with a little bit more meat on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sobel. Deputy Mayor Cox.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm a little confused also by the motion as well, Councillor Bauer. I thought that I heard, I believe Jim or Doug say that they were going to bring back information on how we could move forward. So I would like to see that, as I think, or I believe that Scott and Neil have already engaged their community to find out about that. So I think in the essence of trying to move this forward faster, seeing as though playground season is coming up quickly, I would appreciate it if we could maybe amend that to ask administration to bring us back a report as to how they see it going forward.
Let me turn to Councillor Bauer and see if you'd like to address Deputy Mayor Cox's question.
Thank you, Your Worship. I absolutely would entertain that friendly amendment. The reason that I said that we would support in my motion, that I support in concept the proposed Brave Park and encourage them to come back, is I really want this report. I want the public, and I would like to encourage others to jump on this. And if they know that the town and if they know that this council supports this concept, which is very innovative and revolutionary, that they would come back and present to us other numbers. So I'm not guaranteeing that the proposal will go through. I'm not saying that I in any way endorse the final project. All I'm doing is endorsing this proposal in its conceptual form. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bauer. So would you be okay adding that friendly amendment and wording it somewhere along the lines of directing administration to report back to council on how to proceed on Brave Park? Does that sound workable? Okay, and then I'll come back to Councillor Peterson, I guess, and then Councillor Sobel.
Your Worship, I just have a point of clarification. So our administration would be working with the Lakewood developers on bringing something back. Is that what I am to assume?
Well, there could be a timing situation where administration's report, while it may be separate, could be presented to us on the same date that the Lakewood Meadows developers are able to come forward. So maybe they could consult, but they could have completely separate reports, just timed to come to us on the same council meeting date. And I'll turn to Mr.
I'm on the same page as Councillor Cox. Like I don't see this as an amendment. I see it as a different motion, Your Worship, but that's for you to rule, I guess. The other thing, I'm just looking at our long-term financial plan and thinking about how this could fit and where it might fit, and how both parties coming back in answer to both what CAO Legore articulated and what Councillor Sobel asked. I see that as being a very good sound way forward. But I think it is a different motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Sobel?
Yeah, my point, that's exactly the point I was going to make. I like to go back to administration, because that was not the understanding that I had for what they were coming back with a report on. Their report was going to be on how we could, that was in response to Councillor Montgomery's question, as I understand it. But I'll turn that over to administration. But I'll be very clear on the fact that I'm very confused as to what we're doing right now.
Thank you. Legislative Services.
Thank you, Your Worship. Administration would actually recommend that council, perhaps if there's a new motion coming forward, that the previous motion be withdrawn. And
will we be passing or trying to pass a motion to accept this as information and then direct administration?
Your Worship, that could be an option, yes.
Mr. Legore?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. My recommendation would be that you move to receive the presentation as information and that the matter be directed for administration to report to council.
Councillor Bauer, would you be comfortable rescinding your original motion and turning to one like that? And then we could still direct administration to come forward with the report. But you're the mover, so I'll go to you to ask you.
Thank you so much, Your Worship, for clarification, and thank you to all the councillors that have weighed in. I withdraw my motion. I would like to accept this presentation for councils as presented, and accept that administration will come forward with more options.
Okay, so if we can maybe just wordsmith a bit. Your motion is to accept this report and presentation as information, and we're directing administration to come back to us with a report concerning Brave Park. Does that help?
Thank you, Your Worship.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to jump in there and back you up on that. So thank you for that.
Save me?
Well, you've saved me before. Deputy Mayor Cox.
Your Worship, do we need a date?
Mr. Legore?
To you, Mr. Mayor, I would not recommend a date at this time. We'll work on it as quickly as we can, but I don't want to commit to a date at this time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Cox, and thank you, Mr. Legore. So we do have a brand new motion on the floor, and I think we're all clear on it. So I will, unless there's further discussion, I'll call the motion. All in favor? And that motion is carried. And you'll notice I don't vote too quickly now. I hesitate, you guys, so that I'm not jumping right out there. All right, thank you very much to Scott Silva and to Neil for your presentation. Thank you, councillors, for all your good dialogue, and we look forward to learning more about this unique and very exciting park project in Lakewood Meadows. Thanks, gentlemen.
Thank you very much, council.
All right, this brings us to item 5.3, the public feedback concerning the conversion therapy bylaw. And we have 3 delegations. So I have them. Mr. Person, are you speaking first? So I'd like to welcome Jeff Person in our comms department. He's going to be speaking first. And then we have a delegation. We have 3 people who are going to be presenting to council. Welcome, Jeff.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. So I just wanted to introduce this, that we'd brought the bylaw forward at the bylaw passed first reading at the last meeting of council. Since then, we engaged the public through an online survey that was also promoted in the newspaper. I shared the updated survey results. We kept it open over the weekend as well, just because there was a last-minute pickup in the amount of feedback that was coming in. So in total, 46 people provided their names into the survey, though only 40 provided an answer to the survey. The rest of the feedback has been shared with you. And then tonight we have 3 people who are speaking in person as well. There is an additional response that had been provided at the front counter here at Town Hall. I think that that person raises a really interesting point in their feedback. That's that they hope that their written feedback is weighed the same as any of the verbal feedback or the feedback from the survey. And so certainly that echoes what we had tried to do with this engagement period, which is that all the feedback that was received over this period should be weighed equally. Thank you very much, Your Worship. Thank you very much, Jeff.
So we have a list of 3 speakers, and I'll just remind the speakers that there is a 4-minute time limit per presentation. I believe you've all been informed about that. And please try to keep that in mind. It's not something I enjoy enforcing as far as having to cut people off. I'm always worried about rudeness as far as cutting people off time-wise. But as you can understand, we have a lot of things going on in this meeting tonight as well. So my first speaker is Melissa Langmaid. If you would be so kind as to come forward. Good evening and welcome. And thanks for being here.
I have to hold this? No. Good evening. Thank you very much, Your Worship, and members of council for allowing me to speak with you this evening. Can you hear me okay through the mask? Wonderful. Thank you. I'm Melissa Langmaid. I've lived in Strathmore for about 5.5 years now. I'm an ally of the gender and sexually diverse community, and I'm here this evening to speak in support of the proposed bylaw banning conversion therapy in Strathmore. Members of gender and sexually diverse communities have struggled for years looking for recognition and acceptance. Homosexuality was classified in the DSM as a mental disorder until 1973, and people who identify as homosexual couldn't marry until 2005. The practice of conversion therapy, telling an LGBTQIA2S+ person that something is wrong with them and that it needs fixing, is psychologically harmful, especially when the person that you're speaking to is a child. For example, did you know that suicide attempts for LGBT youth nearly tripled for young people who experienced efforts to change their sexual orientation or gender identity, by their parents or therapists or their religious community? On top of that, they are already 5 times more likely to consider suicide and 7 times more likely to attempt. It's not a choice to be born and identify as part of the gender and sexually diverse community. It's not wrong. It's who this person is. During the last public hearing, we heard presenters speak about concerns that a ban on conversion therapy, not only in Strathmore, but across the country, could have issues or cause issues for people of that religious community that are seeking guidance for thoughts or feelings that are troubling them. And I felt their emotion when they presented, and while I disagreed with their point of view, I could feel their concern. And what that brought up to me, and I provided this in written feedback earlier, but I want to make sure that I have a chance to share it with you this evening, is the idea of consent hasn't been considered in bylaws banning conversion therapy so far. The idea that an adult who is capable of forming consent and who knows inside that they're having thoughts and feelings that are troubling for them should be able to seek religious guidance. I think that's their right, as long as they're an adult they are fully informed of what they are asking for and what services they'll be receiving as part of that treatment, that their consent is enthusiastic, that they are excited to be there and they're hopeful that they're going to get some relief from something they're struggling with, that they've been struggling with, and it needs to be ongoing. Consent is not something that happens just once, it's something that you must consent to every session when you're in therapy. And that has been missing, that idea of consent, that children can't provide consent. Only adults can provide consent, and if an adult consents to receiving, the word I want to use here is receiving services to help guide them through a time of trouble. I don't want to block them from that, but I do want to support this bylaw because children cannot consent and need our protection. We need to protect our vulnerable youth, especially in schools and religious institutions. And I want to leave you this evening with a thought exercise. I'd like you to take this bylaw and turn it around in your brain. If this bylaw were about banning conversion therapy, turning straight people into homosexuals or into transgendered folks, I don't think anyone would blink in a second to say, yes, yes, we should, especially in our community. I think people would support that. So why is there a hesitation when we flip it the other direction?
Thank you very much, and your time is up, but I appreciate your presentation.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And our next speaker, and I'm a little hesitant on your last name, so Colette, if you wouldn't mind coming to the microphone and then just introducing yourself. I'm always, as a former teacher, I was always worried about destroying people's last names. Good evening and welcome.
Thank you so much for allowing me to speak to you today. My name is Colette Aikema, and I'm from Southern Alberta. You know, I'm so glad that we're here, and I want you to support a conversion therapy ban, but it does not have to be this one. And it echoes what Melissa was telling us before, because the definition that's being used in this municipality and in other municipalities across Alberta and in Bill C6, which is going to be federal, is so broad that it includes the therapy and support that I got, that I wanted, that saved my life. And my experience was not unique. I was sexually abused as a child, and as a teenager, I was gang raped. Afterwards, I became addicted to hardcore pornography, and sex addiction and trauma played a huge role in how I developed. And it had a terribly negative impact on me that had nothing to do with queer or LGBTQ+ issues. Because the legislation is purported to be about affirmation and about love and about finding your authentic self and making sure that people are not tortured for finding their authentic selves, but it ignores the darker side of sexuality that's understood by victims like me. So why does this council believe, and any other municipality that has supported this definition, why does this council believe it has the right to use such a poorly supported and widely criticized definition? And I have some information to back that up. There is no other municipality in the entire world besides Canada that has used this definition, because it includes the phrase, any service or tactic used to reduce a person's non-heterosexual behaviors and attractions. And that's what I needed. I had thoughts and feelings, and I was not interested in exploring my identity or exploring my sexual formation. I was only interested in reducing the non-heterosexual attractions and behaviors that I was experiencing, because I knew where they came from, and they were forced upon me against my will. So why use such a poorly supported definition that not only discriminates against people like me, but is also not used anywhere else in the world, or even by any other professional body, even the Canadian ones, like the Canadian Psychological Association? And I have all of those definitions here. Even the United Nations doesn't use that. I will give this to you so that you can use that for your reference. You can support a good conversion therapy ban that actually protects individuals. Or you can support this conversion therapy ban. So please, remember me when you vote, And when you amend this bylaw and think of all the victims like me who should not be told that I do not have the right to get the counseling that I want, because there are many valid reasons why someone may want to reduce their non-heterosexual attractions or behaviors. And that is not something for you or the government to decide. That's my choice as a patient and as a rape victim. I feel hard. It's hard for me that I have to stand up here and talk about this and bring up the hardest parts of my life in order to stand up for the right to have the therapy that I needed. Because if it was not, if this bylaw was in place when I was going through recovery, I would not have been able to come through. I would not have recovered if this bylaw was in place at that time. And so I am grateful it was not, but I ask you please to make sure that we don't make that mistake. Thank you so much, and I'm definitely willing to take questions.
Thank you. And Melissa, if you could just stay, because I neglected to see if council wanted to ask you any questions. So if you're okay with just staying for a little bit. Colette, councillors, do you have any questions for Colette as far as her presentation? Councillor Peterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you very much for your presentation and for your courage. One of my question is the presentation that you've offered. Is it contained in our packages of written information as well, Your Worship, so that we could go back to peruse the references that Colette made regarding the definitions?
I don't think so. I read through it again this afternoon and I did not see Colette's information, but she does have it here tonight, which she can share.
I can submit everything I've had, and I can email it right after the email, or right after the meeting.
I'd be very appreciative. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other questions for Colette from council? Okay, thank you very much, Colette, for your presentation. And I will turn to Melissa, if you wouldn't mind coming back, just in case there's any questions from councillors. Does council have any questions for Melissa Langmaid tonight on her presentation? Councillor Montgomery?
I just wanted to thank Melissa for speaking and I feel like she had a fairly balanced kind of view, and I want to thank her for having a balanced view like that. And I also want to thank Colette for speaking as well. I can't imagine how hard that must be, and so I just want to say I appreciate both of these ladies for coming in and speaking to us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Peterson. No. Any other questions for Melissa? Seeing none, thank you again, Melissa, for speaking tonight, and thank you, Colette. Your courage is very commendable, and you raised some good points, so thank you for tonight. That brings us to our third and final speaker tonight, Mr. Jonathan Taylor. Jonathan, welcome, and we look forward to hearing from you.
All right, good evening. My name is Jonathan Taylor, and I'm here as a concerned resident of the Strathmore area. So thank you, Your Worship, and town councillors for the opportunity to speak to you today. I commend you for your good motivations to protect vulnerable LGBTQ persons through this bylaw. However, this bylaw does so much more than that. Unless the bylaw is amended, I believe it will do more harm than good. I have explained in detail in an information sheet that was provided to each of you the risks and dangers of the bylaw and the significant negative effects it could have on Strathmore residents for practices that are actually not harmful but could be helpful. But today I want to explain an even deeper concern I have. This bylaw is almost identical to the Calgary bylaw that was enacted in May 2020. During the Calgary proceedings, the sponsors of the bylaw admitted that they were not trying to stop abusive, harmful practices, but instead they were trying to change the way society thinks. They were trying to change certain beliefs that they felt, quote, did not fit with objective reality. They specifically called out Christians and referred to our beliefs about sexuality and gender and stated, quote, we have to adjust beliefs we hold if they don't comport with reality. That is why the bylaw is worded so broadly, and why the definition of conversion therapy is so much broader than the definition used by professional organizations or provincial or foreign governments. It is not only trying to stop true conversion therapy, it is trying to change belief. I hope you can see why, as a Christian, I would feel threatened by this legislation. When a government body suggests that my religious views are harmful, promote prejudice and discrimination, and must change, and when the same body points to legislation that includes severe financial penalties and jail terms as a means to effect this change, I am justifiably alarmed. I am even more concerned when these same bylaws sweep across the country from municipality to municipality unchallenged and are even being considered at the federal level with 5-year prison sentences. The political pressure to adopt these bylaws without any change is tremendous. I don't envy your situation. You are caught in the middle and put in an extremely difficult political situation. But I believe there is a way forward, a way that respects the rights of all Strathmore residents, a way which protects the vulnerable LGBTQ persons and doesn't unfairly marginalize the faith community, including LGBTQ persons within the faith community. There have been members of the LGBTQ community who have presented before this council and explained how the bylaw would prevent them from getting the support and counseling they desire to live according to their religious beliefs and personal preferences. The bylaw can be amended to strike the appropriate balance. With the help of legal counsel, I've included in my written submission a small proposed addition to the definition of conversion therapy that would help focus the bylaw on banning only true conversion therapy without negatively impacting innocent members of the Strathmore community. I believe that the decision of this council can make a real difference across Canada. Doors swing on very small hinges. Please take a stand today and show other government bodies that reasoned, measured, and balanced conversion therapy laws that protect and respect the rights of all citizens are possible. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. Are there any questions from councillors for, oh, you're very good. You're like 2 seconds off. Very proud of you, John. Any questions from councillors? Seeing none, then I thank you for your presentation. And Jennifer, we're looking for a motion to accept the public feedback as information. Okay, thank you. Councillors, is anyone prepared to make a motion to accept the public feedback presentations as information? Councillor Montgomery.
Yes, I will move that we accept these presentations for information.
Thank you very much for your motion, and I'll call the motion. All in favor? And that motion is carried. Thank you. So we'll carry on with the next part of our agenda. And this will, the bylaw discussion will come back to us a little later in the meeting. We have no consent agenda tonight in item 6. And at this time in item 7, I'm looking to adopt the March 3rd, 2021 regular council meeting minutes. Deputy Mayor Cox.
Your Worship, I move that Council adopt the March 3rd, 2021 regular council meetings as presented.
Thank you for that motion, and we have a motion on the floor. Is there any discussion on that motion regarding the minutes? Seeing none, all in favor? And that motion is carried. Thank you. We have no tabled items tonight. That brings us to item 9, items or reports from administration. 9.1, 2021-2022 RCMP policing priorities, which is found on page 17 of your agenda. And Mr. Salvatore, are you presenting on this?
Your Worship, I'd like to welcome our detachment commander, Sergeant Salmon, and his colleague to make a presentation to you and council. And I'll hand it off to Sergeant Salmon. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Sergeant Salmon, and welcome.
Good evening. Thank you for having me. So my purpose tonight is just to establish and to make sure that we are all on the same page with what the town of Strathmore wishes for our annual performance plan for our policing priorities for the town of Strathmore. I believe you've been provided with a list that was just generated from my interactions with people and the feedback that I've got. From Mr. Salvatore, I guess there was some additional priorities that were discussed, and I'm here to answer any questions, and essentially whatever council decides our priorities will be is what we will incorporate into our annual performance plan. There are some changes with our performance plan with the RCMP this year. It is much more flexible. They're trying to be more responsive to the needs of the communities that we provide policing services to. So they are changeable. These are not locked in for an entire year. We can actually change these. I believe we can go as short as monthly. If there is a crisis or there's an issue in town that council feels that the police need to focus on, we're able to change our policing plan to address that concern and that need of the community. So that's a new thing coming in this next fiscal year, so starting in April. And yeah, that's all I have to say about that. So I'm open to questions. Fire away.
Thank you, Sergeant Salmon, for your presentation and your clarification on those items. Councillor Sobel.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Sergeant Salmon. Excuse me for that. So, a couple things. I'm just going to start actually by suggesting and stating that the RCMP in our community has a great deal of respect and support as our police force. There are those that may not agree, but I believe, judging from what I've heard, that there is wide support, and with some of the steps that have been taken in the last year, a lot of areas have actually improved, and those are areas that were raised as part of the priorities. So way back when, 100 years ago, when I did these priorities, they were called something different, and we were ordered to keep them in the area of 3 or 4, and I know you've got 5, which was impressive. And I don't mean to make your life difficult, but I know there was another 5 that were thrown on there, and I guess I want to look at this as pie in the sky. To turn around and say that there are 10 areas that need improvement, I think it overreaches a little bit. But those, I think, all 10 are areas that we feel are the most, I won't say we, that I feel are the most important. They've been put together by members of this council. And I don't know if that's too many, Jay, to put on as policing priorities. But if they're written down for members to see that this is something that this council is interested in seeing as a priority, not something that is going to be resolved or fixed to the point where it doesn't exist anymore, but just something in the back of members' mind to know that. And once again, I appreciate that 10 is a lot, but that these 10 issues are the ones that we feel would make a difference in our community. If that's possible, then I think that would be great. But I'll turn it back over to you and ask you if that's even possible. And I appreciate the new outlook by the force in regards to being able to change these, and maybe that's something we can do as well. But certainly, it's hard when you try to look at this list and try to remove something. You don't really want to remove it because it is something we're quite interested in. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sobel. I think that the list is easily integrated into each other. Like, these are not isolated issues in town or even our broader whole detachment area. Like things like communication. Well, communication leads into youth engagement, right? So you can build these priorities and have them within each other. And I think if we are creative enough, we can actually get all 10 of these priorities into our plan, and then hopefully we can report back and see some concrete evidence. I think we're doing a lot of these already. It's just maybe not being reported back appropriately.
Exactly. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sergeant Salmon. I believe I have Councillor Montgomery first and then Deputy Mayor Cox.
Thank you, Worship. And thank you very much for providing these recommendations, Sergeant. One question I have for you, and this is just, I guess, for the public, because I understand that, property crime it's kind of, unfortunately a serious issue here. If you could just talk about what the RCMP can do as far as attempting to reduce property crime in town.
Yeah, what we do is there's always the fallback of we want to be intelligence-led policing, and that is true. We want to know why we're going a certain direction when we come out from the detachment. It's not just because Tim Hortons is that way, or we want to go over to see this park or something like that. We want to have a reason for what we're doing and where we're going, and that's part of that crime reduction. The other thing that we're actively doing is with our GIS unit and our crime reduction unit, they're integrated in with each other. They are doing things like curfew checks and compliance checks on release conditions and things like that. So it's really trying to not only work on the major files that they carry, but kind of step that up a little bit and do some more proactive checks to make sure that the people that, like we recently charged a resident in Strathmore with trafficking, or possession for the purpose of trafficking, fentanyl, cocaine, and methamphetamines. So he's on release conditions. So we need to be out there knocking on his door, making sure that person is compliant with his release conditions. And if he's not, taking him back before a justice of the peace and letting the justice of the peace decide if he should be out in the community or not. So I hope that answers your question on some of the, just a couple little quick things that we can do to reduce crime in Strathmore.
Okay, yeah, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Montgomery. Deputy Mayor Cox.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just want to know, just even for public's sake, when we have numbers beside certain things, it almost gives them a priority. Is that what you're trying to say with these 5 that you've put there? Or is each one equally as important to you? I just want to make sure that we are all clear that on the priority of these 5 things soon to be.
No, that's an excellent question. I look at it as just a way to stay organized. It's not there's not one thing that's more important than the other. They're all priorities. I mean, we could have 100 things that we need to work on, and there is 100 things that we need to work on. These are just kind of the ones that the communities want us to focus on right now. And it's not a 1 versus 10 is the most important. They're all important.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Cox. Councillor Bauer.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would just like to recognize Sergeant Salmon, Acting Strathmore Detachment Commander, and thank him for not only your service, but also the dedication that you have with working through these priorities and involving members of not only our town council, but the Traffic Advisory Committee, Siksika Band Council, and our administration with also input from the public. And I think that, as a team, we work so well together. And that is something that I'm completely proud of. Any time that you have come to council, I really believe that you've been open and readily accept our feedback, as well as answering our questions with honesty and integrity every time. And I do also recognize that you have a very large area, and maybe our public isn't even aware of how big this area is. When I saw the map, even I was a little bit surprised. The farthest corners of your reach and the time it must take your officers, to go to these calls, and it's all. It all just adds to the amount of admiration that I have for your job, sir. And so I would like you to talk a little bit about that, to talk a little bit about our jurisdiction and how it's how you are able to adapt and what you do to get out to those regions. And then my second question kind of deals with a little bit of something that we hear a lot of, but we don't really know how the RCMP is targeting in our community. And I don't see in this priority list, and that's social media. And how does that play a part in your role and in policing today? Thank you.
Yes. Okay. So to talk about our detachment area, the easiest way is to just say we go from the Bow River to McKnight Boulevard in Calgary, from Stony Trail all the way out to Rockyford. So we have a huge area. There's roughly, I'm going to guess here, over 30,000 people that live in that area. Like Conrich is ours, Langdon is ours, Strathmore's ours, Standard's ours, Rockyford's ours, Carsland's ours. So all of those communities, we are their police service. We work really hard to get everywhere and to do as much as we can to reduce crime and keep people safe. The reality is we could have 100 more police officers and crime would still happen. So we have to work with the partners that we have and do the best that we can and try to efficiently, and that's we go back to the intelligence-led policing, to direct our resources where it's going to get the best bang for our buck. One other thing, and I guess it leads into your second question, is the social media. The RCMP is, I guess, slow to the dance is the best way to say it. When it comes to social media, for getting our own stuff out there. We have a Facebook, we have an Instagram, but we were slow getting there. It's still, I would say, almost in its infancy. They're working, I know, behind the scenes in the commanders' teleconferences and stuff that I've been part of. They're working on trying to make us so we are better able to use those tools to get our messaging out to people, to be more reactive to the needs of the communities. As far as social media for the public, it's so much education, and people just have to understand that there's really, really good things, and it can be used for really, really, really bad things. And people have to educate themselves. If we can get out and educate people, we take that opportunity. We probably need to improve in the way that we're educating people, as opposed to try to be more proactive with it, as opposed to reactive. Because right now I feel like a lot of the things that we do with it are reactive. And again, that's an area that we can improve on. But I've said it already tonight, there's 100 areas that we can improve on, and that's just one of them. So I hope that answers that.
It absolutely does. And thank you very much for responding. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Councillor Bauer. Deputy Mayor Cox, did you have a comment or a question? No? I just want to take a moment too, and I'm a staunch supporter in the RCMP. I think they've done an amazing job over the many, many years. I know there have always been opportunities for improvement, but I like how the detachments are really working to improve that. Very impressed with how well your detachment, and you in particular, were so receptive as far as our work with Siksika on the tripartite agreement, policing agreement, as well as the detachment, the South region. Very supportive, got so much done with all of you folks, so very appreciative of that. And I wanted to take a quick minute to thank Wheatland County and the Reeve Amberlink for continuing to support their watch clerk position. That's going to be a huge benefit as far as morale in the detachment, as well as freeing up members to get out into the communities. And I think it really helps the villages as well, like Rockyford and Standard. So I wanted to thank Wheatland County for that as well. Thank you, Sergeant Salmon. Mr. Legore.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. I would recommend that Council adopt the letter of expectations that we drafted in 2020 that will address all the priorities we talked about here. We'll do a little wordsmithing on the letter to make sure we encompass everything that's come up here tonight and be able to get this to staff, or Sergeant Salmon right away so they can move forward.
Do you need that in a motion tied into that direction on the policing priorities then, an official letter to be
That's right.
drafted?
If we could just get a motion that we approve the letter of expectations as drafted in 2020 for our RCMP policing priorities.
Councillors at home, were you able to understand that, and is someone able to craft a motion? Councillor Bauer. I thought she was making a motion. You're not making a motion, or are you? Okay, thank you. Is someone prepared to make a motion following Mr. Councillor Montgomery? Thank you.
Thank you. I will move that administration proceed with the letter as drafted and send that to the RCMP once finalized.
Thank you very much for your motion. Is that clear enough, Mr. Legore? Thank you, Councillor Montgomery. You've all heard the motion. Any discussion? All in favor? And that motion is carried. Thank you, Council, and thank you, Sergeant Salmon, for your patience as well tonight. Mr. Salvatore?
Thank you, Your Worship. Further to matters involving the RCMP, I would like to ask Council their consideration of a motion to support the letter from Wheatland County and Rocky View County for the support of administrative costs through the Solicitor General.
Councillors, have you all gotten information and are fully comfortable with the proposed letter request from Rocky View County as well as Wheatland County? Any comments from our councillors? Councillor Sobel?
It's not a comment on that. It's a comment in regards to the motion. Is it possible to just have Jen just with Paul jot that down so that it's worded correctly? I'd be happy to make that motion. It's just I just want to make sure it's right.
Mr. Legore, did you want to speak to that at all, or?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I would recommend that we sign the letter in support of Wheatland County. To be honest to Council, I doubt that we're going to get anywhere. It will not be funded by the RCMP or the province for watch clerks. That's strictly and clearly an administrative cost to the municipalities. There's no harm in sending the letter, but I can tell you what the response will be. It's a municipal responsibility.
Thank you for that clarification, and I believe Jennifer and Deb are wordsmithing right now with their usual rapid, intelligent actions. Councillor Sobel.
Thank you. Just in regards to those comments by the CAO, the only thing that may change with that is dollars that were committed to rural policing, and both these municipalities, of course, are rural policing. So if anybody's going to get that, it's going to be the rural municipalities because of the way the extra dollars came in. So you know what, you're right. It probably will not, but I think they do have a shot at it, and I certainly support their efforts to go for it.
Thanks, Councillor.
I'm ready with a motion.
Okay, so could I just add one thing just before Councillor Montgomery? Mr. Legore, did Wheatland County initially make a request to the province that was turned down? Am I correct in that, or am I wrong?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I don't believe they've made the request yet. This is the letter that they've drafted. They're hoping to get 3 municipalities on board to get it forward to the province.
Okay, good. Thank you for that clarification. Councillor Montgomery.
Thank you. I will move that Council provide or Council support Wheatland County's letter to the province asking for help covering administrative costs for the RCMP.
For the Watch Clerk program?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Montgomery. So we have a motion on the floor. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? And that motion is carried. Thank you, Councillor Montgomery, for jumping in there and saving me. So far, Councillor Bauer saved me tonight, and you've saved me tonight. I'm counting on the rest of you to step it up a little. All right, that brings us to Happy Cat funding, which is on page 22, and I'd like to thank Michelle Shave and Barb Stefanik for being so patient tonight. Mr. Salvatore, are you speaking first to introduce and to give us a preamble?
Thank you, Your Worship. Not much to say. I know that there's a lot of information in your package that you can refer to. I'm very happy to hand it over to our presenters here, Ms. Shave and Ms. Stefanik. So I will leave it at that and leave it in your hands, Your Worship. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Salvatore. Michelle, are you starting? And Barb, would you like to weigh in after Michelle speaks? And then we'll have probably some questions from councillors. So
I think
Michelle?
Barb's going to start, if that's okay.
Sure, that's perfect. Thanks. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you.
Your Honor and members of the council, we wanted to thank you all for the funding you've given us over the last 3 years, and it has been exceptional what we've been able to accomplish with that. As of December the 31st, the town funded us with $88,000, which averaged $29,700 per year. Based on our total income from donations, adoption sales, fundraising, etc., the funding the town gave us counts for 27% of our income. Over the past 3 years, we rescued 607 cats, with 221 of them coming from within the town. That is 36% of cats rescued coming directly from the town, with only 27% of it being funded. 36% of our expenses averaged $35,000 per year. The town funded us close to $30,000 a year. Our volunteer hours are approximately 4,700 hours per year. All 4 of the vet clinics, or 3 of the vet clinics in Strathmore and 1 vet clinic in Calgary, support us and give us big discounts to help us with everything we are doing. This year, we are asking for $48,000 in total funding. The town will receive the same care and attention that we have given you over the last 3 years. The reason that we are asking for extra money, as I'm sure you have read in our handouts, is that Michelle is no longer able to donate as many hours as she has been. So we are planning on hiring a person to run the day-to-day transactions of Happy Cat. We can fund half of that through our donations, but the other half we have to get funded from outside sources, and hoping that is the town. With the current COVID restrictions, another casino in the near future isn't in our outlook. So we have to look elsewhere for funding and hoping the town can help us out. We have many volunteer possibilities within Happy Cat, with fostering, working at the adoption center, working with presentations, working with cats. It's really important to get children involved in volunteering at a young age. And we have several families that volunteer at the adoption center. It keeps the community involved, which is good for the town. Over the last year, we won the Strathmore and Wheatland Chamber of Commerce nonprofit for the year. We had it amazed us at how many people voted for us over every other nonprofit in this town. And then when they had their event, they actually raised $4,600 for Happy Cat from individuals in the town and businesses. And to me, that just shows how much community support Happy Cat has and how much of a resource that we are actually needed. We adopted 433 cats into new homes over the last 3 years. A lot of those people wouldn't be able to afford to have a cat if they couldn't adopt it between $150 and $175 per cat to have it spayed, neutered, microchipped, etc., vaccinated. You guys got the presentations. I hope you all had time to read them. And if you have any questions, please ask us, and hopefully we can answer them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Barb. Michelle, did you want to jump in with a couple of comments, or are you comfortable with what Barb has said?
I'm good. We were supposed to be together tonight, so yeah, she's pretty much said it all. So I'll leave it up to you guys with questions.
I do have to say, Michelle, it looks like you're gaming as well as speaking today.
I am. Yeah.
Excellent.
Can you tell?
Call of Duty tonight?
Yeah.
Councillor Sobel.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Barb and Michelle, for being here, and truly for all the work you guys do. It's I know it's a labor of love, but you guys are making a difference in our community. So a couple of questions. You mentioned that there is 36% of cats are coming directly from town limits. Where would the 64%, the other 64% be coming from?
Oh, she forgot to unmute. Basically, there, I'll let her. There you go.
No, not yet.
There I am.
There you go.
Okay, so the other 64% come from Wheatland County, Chestermere, Calgary, Gleason, Carsland, farming communities. We pretty much help whoever we can help. And we've been able to do that over the years because we've had the funding, and we took as many cats as we could from the town. I don't recall having to turn many away. So, okay, that's my answer.
Thank you. And have any of these municipalities been asked for some funding as well, Barb? Wheatland County, Rockyford, Rocky View, whatever.
Yeah, we did an application to Wheatland County prior to sending the town all the information, and they flatly turned us down for any funding.
Thank you. And lastly, you were talking about fundraisers and with the casinos. I know that things are tough right now, but are you looking at this as a 1 year funding model to get you into a better situation in regards to the casinos?
I think we're hoping for the 3-year term again, and then if we can hire an individual, we can put a lot more effort into looking for government grants and PetSmart grants and different funding that might be available to us.
Thanks very much, Barb. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Councillor Sobel and Barb. Councillor Montgomery.
Thank you very much. One question I have is, what happens, I guess, to your budget if you weren't taking on that extra 64%? If you just limited yourself to, does that make you, I guess, come closer to being able to break even more easily?
If we put every donation we had towards just Town of Strathmore cats, we probably could manage. but the majority of our donations come from outside of Strathmore. So that wouldn't be fair to those donators because they're supporting us because we've supported them. Like we have donators from Leduc, Alberta, because they have adopted a cat from us. We have donators from Saskatchewan. And if we started not supporting any Wheatland County cats or any Calgary cats or Gleason, or I think it would destroy our donation base and would kind of destroy the rescue.
Okay, so you're saying like if we didn't accept, or if you didn't accept, say, a cat from Chestermere, then somebody from out of town might also not adopt a cat, which.
Well, not just one cat. We do refuse cats all the time. We try to take every single cat that is either available in the town or is surrendered in the town. We make that our major effort. But if we refused everybody out there, we would have, except for town residents, we wouldn't get any other funding almost, except from the town.
Strathmore is our priority, but we definitely do our best to help outside of Strathmore as well.
What percentage of cats would you say are adopted in Strathmore? So like, stay in Strathmore?
We haven't actually calculated that figure, but it's getting bigger because of our adoption center. But our adoption center is costing us like $1,400 a month. So I think if our adoption center was to disappear, our adoptions from Strathmore would slowly dwindle. We used to display our cats at PetSmart in Sunridge, but due to COVID, that really didn't happen in 2020. So I would think, I'm not sure, what do you think, Michelle? You're probably more on top of adoptions.
Yeah, I'm just looking at adoption applications within the last month, and I'm just going to throw an estimate that 3/4 of them are from within Strathmore. Just looking at the ones that I've received.
And we display our cats. Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
We display our cats at Pet Value as well in Strathmore, so that every cat we've sent there has been adopted within 2 weeks, or give or take.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I guess, pardon me for caring about the numbers like this. But so, I mean, like if you refused all cats from outside of town and 75% of the cats that you do get, are being adopted within town, wouldn't you basically be able to adopt out all the cats you receive in town? And so your cost, like your revenue would go down because you're not obviously adopting as many cats out, but your cost would also go down. So, and I guess the other, because I'm interested in, ensuring that you're sustainable and that, that you're efficient, essentially. And so like my next question was actually going to be, do you need the retail space? Is it possible for you to exist in a non-retail space that's perhaps less costly? And I was even wondering if, there's a way for the town to, provide space, non-retail space, of course, but just to lower your cost so that you can be sustainable.
Right. And without the adoption center, I think it would hurt our adoptions in Strathmore, and it would hurt the goodwill that the town is given to Happy Cat and has also given to all the residents who volunteer for us. Like, our volunteers are incredibly loyal, and a good part of their life is virtually volunteering for us. But if we didn't have the funding, we couldn't keep the adoption center open. And I think our figures show that, and like 2020 kind of wrecked our figures, because over previous years we were doing like in 2018 we did 92 from the town. In 2019 we did 97 from the town. And then in 2020 with COVID, we were only able to take 32 cats. So I think if we would have had better statistics if we weren't looking at COVID. which is an excuse, but it is a reality.
Well, we did have to close the center for probably a total of 3 to 4 months. So we definitely lost adoptions during that period. And we average, I think, 2 a week. So yeah, the numbers are down because of that.
Like, do you have any plans as far as like, ways to improve efficiency or to like reduce your overhead? Like, I'm even thinking like, cause you're saying like, sometimes you partner up with, like say a pet store or like, a pet food store or something like that. Is there any opportunities to, even co-locate or something like that with one of those places?
Well, we were originally asking the town to let us use the Pound as our intake facility. And recently the Red Carrot has offered the space in their ATCO trailer that we could set that up for our intake. And they're not going to charge us anything, of course, until they sell the building. So that part we're saving on, but we're pretty tight budget-wise. Like, nobody gets a cent. Like, there's a little bit of gas money spent. Our biggest expense is the vets. And like, if a cat needs vet work, we're kind of there. And we do help residents, like people put their cat to sleep who can't afford it. And that's in town and out of town. But we do step up when vet work is needed. Recently, one of our adopters who adopted like 5 years ago, their cat needed like over $2,000 of surgery and they couldn't afford it. So we did step up and donate $1,000 to that cat. But we're also getting funding from all over the place. Like, the town is only funding us for 27%. So the other, whatever it is, 72%, or my math might be wrong, is going to help all the other cats as well. And it's hard to turn away certain cats and to take other cats, but we are frugal.
Yeah, we are.
Like, other rescues will spend like $12,000 on one dog. The only time Happy Cat has spent $7,000 on a cat was when I donated the money for the cat. Otherwise, we wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
Okay. And, like, I understand it's a labor of love for you and for the people that, do this. For me, I'm just trying to, I guess, I'm trying to balance, I guess, the value to the community and trying to balance, the budget essentially. And I'll have to give it more thought. Thank you very much for answering my question. So,
you're welcome.
Thank you, Councillor Montgomery. Councillor Peterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. My question is for administration. I noticed in our capital plan, in our 2021 to 25 capital plan, that in 22 we have the dog pound set up for $50,000, and I consider this in light of Councillor Sobel's thinking about, at least I don't want to put words in his mouth, but thinking about a 1-year funding plan to greater examination. So I'm asking administration where we're at with the dog pound now. So I know that we run a dog pound. Do we have money in the budget? And I'm looking down the road at how I heard Barb say that they've looked into that a little bit, and I don't know what the restrictions or the requirements or the process. But if we funded for 1 year and then moved forward in some kind of a manner that we could fund somebody to run both the pound and the cat sanctuary, if we couldn't save the town considerable amount of money and still accomplish what we've already accomplished, or what they have already accomplished with this program. So that's my question to administration, is within where we're at with the dog pound, and is it a possibility that we could look at something to combine these two programs?
Mr. Legore? Oh, Paul.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you for your question, Councillor Peterson. I'm not aware of any significant funds that have been set aside for improvements for the dog pound facility for the town. We do have some minimal upgrades that we're doing this year to the tune of less than $5,000. in order to do that. As far as I know, I'm not aware of that, but I'm happy to go back and find that information for you and provide it to you following the meeting.
Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Salvatore. A question for either Barb or Michelle. I just want to verify. So you're looking for an additional $37,000 this year with the commitment for that same amount over the next 2 years? Is that, am I hearing that correctly? Barb or Michelle? I think.
Sorry, wrong button. Well, this year we're getting 11,000. That does us until May, maybe. And then instead of the $33,000 a year that you gave us over the last 2 years, we're asking for $48,000 a year so that we can hire somebody to more or less take over Michelle's position, which will also make more time to help bylaw with any cats that are in. So bylaw won't have to keep cats as long because we'll be able to take them, plus having the facility at the Red Carrot. So it will help the town bylaw out with cats tremendously, but it is more funding than what you did give us over the last 3 years.
Right. So your ask is 48,000 minus the 11,000 that we've already committed for this year?
Yeah.
So 37,000 is what you're looking for? And
I guess so, yes.
I know that not everyone in the public is going to have the same information we have or appreciate what your group does. Like they're going to fixate on the amount of money that we're supposed to come up with. So I'm wondering if you could take a minute or two just to speak to what would happen should the Happy Cat group not be able to run as they have in the past. What would Strathmore residents see if you weren't operating?
They would see an abundance of cats running on the streets. They would have more feral cats ripping apart their garbage, terrorizing their dogs, terrorizing their pet cats. Since we've started, there still are feral cats in the town, but when we started, you could move your head and see 5 of them. And it would impact the town tremendously because everybody who moves and abandons a cat, if a town person catches that cat and takes it to the town, then the town would have to take it to the Calgary Humane Society. So it would add a lot of work onto bylaw and onto residents, and also to be able to surrender your cat. Like in the past week, we've taken 2 surrenders from people that can no longer take care of their cats. And to them, it's a huge weight off their shoulders knowing their cat is going to find a new home. Do you have anything to add, Michelle?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that our volunteer opportunities have just exceeded what we even anticipated. And for the town and like groups such as FAME to lose us would be a huge hit on the community in general. It's a lot of people have dedicated a lot of time and they're very proud of what they've accomplished in Strathmore. They actually see the difference that it's making, and not just in cats' lives, but in the people's lives as well. So that's all I got to say.
And also the vet clinics would be inundated.
Yes.
With cats found and dropped off at the vets. And that's why they've given us the letters of support, because they realize how much money, even though they are giving us discounts, they realize how much money that we're saving them. And they would probably dump a lot of that back on the town if we weren't here.
Yeah, we do definitely help low-income families within Strathmore to fix their cats. So there's a lot less pregnant cats and kittens out there. And like I said, our TNR program, the Trap Neuter Release that we had discussed 3 years ago, is successful, and we will continue doing that as well.
Thank you for that further information, ladies. Councillor Bauer and then Councillor Peterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just hope to kind of wrap this up. First of all, Michelle and Barb, I just want to thank you for your presentation, the letters of support that you brought to us, and your longtime service to our community. I support you personally and your continued work in our community. And as you know, I've given a fur baby named Stevie Licks a home. And that would not have happened because she came to us so emaciated, frozen. She just had so many issues. And without Happy Cat, I would have not been able to give her a home because of the cost of the vet bills. And you just ensured that she would come to us whole, and that her last maybe 10 years of her life would be quality years rather than, end up in a ditch somewhere or, coyote food or whatever. And she's a pretty amazing cat, I must say. And I'm not a cat person, but you've changed me. And, when you came to us years and years ago and asked us for money, I was really hesitant. I see the value. I really do. What I'm struggling with is that in this climate right now, I don't know if I can justify those numbers again to our ratepayers. And so when I'm, for this particular meeting, I mean, you've been on for almost the entire thing. You've seen lots of things coming to us and us having to, decide whether or not we're going to fund a playground and now, Happy Cat. And it's just tough. And what I really would like to know is there a solution or a combined approach, or could we maybe put on another hat to think of another direction that we could go? And so Councillor Peterson's suggestion of perhaps working with the town going forward, maybe that's a more equitable way of combining our resources and going forward. I just don't know if expansion is sustainable right now. And so for those reasons, I'm really hesitant to support the $37,000 ask. And I would prefer if we were able to almost entertain another solution rather than just that, because I don't want us to say no and then you guys just be left high and dry. I would like to help you, but decide if there's some in-kind ways that we can help you or some other services that we can find from other sources. So do you have any comments about that? Are there any avenues that you think you haven't tapped into as of just yet?
Not really. We've been doing this for 14 years. And like I say, we're tight budget. We get all our food donated. We get most of our litter donated. There's really no place we can go. Like both me and Michelle have been giving over 20 hours a week to this charity for the past 14 years. And we can't find any volunteers that are willing to do what we do. And that is the only reason we're looking at hiring somebody, is that we can continue doing what we're doing. Like Michelle has to find a job for her family, her new family. Like it's a lot. Like I'm retired now, so I can keep doing what I'm doing. But to run a rescue, it's all government. Everything has to be detailed, paperwork done. We don't waste $1. Like we don't spend money on cats unless it's like a dental. Yes, we'll spend money on a dental, but we don't waste money on experimental surgeries or anything like that. Like we're pretty tight. And the vets will even admit that like we're one of the most well-balanced rescues out there, that we do not waste veterinary funds.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Councillor Peterson. And Councillor Peterson, you're up to speak, and I hurt myself.
I'm sorry for you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Your Worship. I guess I remember when we were discussing budgetary considerations in 2017 and 2016 and trying to work this out. One of the things that I remember when we were talking to Bylaw and to, I believe it was Trent West at the time, he said that at that time, I remember we were running numbers, and he said it was costing the town between $35,000 and $45,000 to look after cats in a given year. Is that your recollection, Michelle? Like, I'm just going back through mine, and I'm finding different sets of numbers, but it seems that it was in that area.
Yeah, it was. And I think his initial request was closer to funding $50,000 a year. Yeah.
Yeah, it was 1,700. I have that in the initial 2017. So just thinking, like I'm thinking about what Councillor Montgomery has said about, finding efficiencies and looking at all of these things. And I'm thinking about, from taking a previous speaker, she said, flip it. Think about if you weren't here, if you have to walk away, what is it going to cost us? So I think about 4,700 volunteer hours, and the public hasn't seen this. So at minimum wage, that's $70,000. The $25,000 in donations, the town probably didn't get those before. I'm assuming you brought those to the table when you came to us. The investment revenue, that did not come from the town, that came through you. So we lose that $37,000. So we stand to lose considerable amount, I think. And if you don't, you have an idea, would you be willing to look at a year, as Councillor Sobel was suggesting, at a year in, and then in that time try to work out a new strategy for moving forward? Because I hear, anyway, I'll just.
Thank you, Councillor Peterson. Councillor Sobel?
I'm about ready for a motion, Your Worship. I just
before you do make a motion, could I ask?
Well, I wasn't going to. I was comment
I'll
first
come right
because I have a
back to
question
you.
for
Can I
administration.
come right back to you?
Motion, but go ahead.
Okay.
Yes.
Mr. Legore, if there was a motion to try to help them with this year, the money they need, where would or could those funds come from?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, currently based on the budget today, it would be a 0.35% tax increase. However, when we get the actual assessment roll and set the mill rate, we may find that there's sufficient funds in there that we can keep it to the zero, but it could result in a slight increase. But I just want to go back and answer one of the questions that was raised earlier. Is there anything the town can do in kind services that would reduce the financial contribution? There is nothing we can do other than provide financial contribution to this group. There's no services that we have that we could offer them that would assist them in any way.
Thank you for that clarification. Now, Councillor Sobel, I'll go to you.
Your Worship, can I just follow up with CAO Legore?
Okay.
So if I'm understanding this right, Mr. Legore, if Happy Cat walks away, because I think what I'm hearing from them is if they don't get a minimum standard, and they're not asking for an increase in service, they just have a different model because of how we're going forward. But if they walk away, we're still going to assume the expenses that we had pre-2018. Is that correct? Which would be in that $40,000, $50,000 range.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the town would definitely incur some costs. I'm not prepared to commit as to what that would be, but there's no questions we would incur some costs if the Happy Cat Sanctuary was not available as an option to the town.
Thank you. I'll go to Councillor Sobel. I think you wanted to make a comment and then make a motion.
Sure, and I was going to ask about where that money was going to be coming from, as well as the figure, if a motion was made. Just confirming with administration before I make both those things. the 11,000 was not approved as yet, or was it? Is it full amount of 48 required, or has 11 already been approved? I can't recall.
Yeah, the 11 is approved for this year. So I guess this year we would only be asking, because we run fiscally, so it would be the 48,000 less 11,000, so 37,000 additional to what that we've already been promised.
Thanks, Barb, and not that I doubt you or anything, but I need that coming from the CAO.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. That's fine. That's fine. Doug, is it a full amount for the year 2021?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, you would just amend that motion, and you don't amend it because it has not been put on the floor yet. You would just approve funding for Happy Cat Sanctuary in the amount of $48,000 from the 2021 budget.
Thank you. So just before I make that motion, I just wanted to make a comment. If anybody wants to know what will happen to Strathmore, just take a drive out to Canmore and watch the bunny rabbits. And I'll tell you what, they're paying a lot more than $50,000 a year to deal with their problem. I've been to communities that are overrun with feral cats, and there's a whole bunch of problems with it, the least of which is the smell. This is out of sight, out of mind, so everybody's hesitating. But I'll tell you what, we stop this and it will no longer be out of sight, out of mind. It'll be right in everybody's face, and we'll have people turning around saying, what are you doing about these cats? My motion, Your Worship, is that Council approve funding for Happy Cat Sanctuary in the amount of $48,000 for the year of 2021 from the 2021 budget. It'll be a one-year budget I'm proposing, during which time I'm hoping that we can try to resolve this and perhaps look at this a little differently for following years.
Thank you for that motion. We have a motion on the floor. Is there a discussion? And I believe I see Councillor Montgomery's hand is up.
Thank you, Worship. So I believe in the value. I was convinced a few years ago that we would be spending more on an annual basis to deal with the cat problem, or the feral cat problem, let's say, if we weren't, if we didn't have the Happy Cat. I guess, like, for my question, I have a question for administration at this point, and that is, they've said that they might have the money. I need a bit more solid information as to whether or not where the money will be coming from, before I could support that.
I guess, Mr. Legore, do you have any assurances or information that Councillor Montgomery could have as far as the potential for finding that funding sometime later in the spring, summertime?
Through you, Mayor, until we get our tax roll finalized and come forward with the mill rate, I cannot identify any other sources other than tax increase, but I guess we could look at reserve transfers, but I don't know that is appropriate for something operational like this. One way or other, the town will find the money, I guess, is the short answer, either through a small tax increase or a reserve transfer.
Thank you very much for that.
If the assessment roll comes in sufficient, we will be able to still get by with a 0% tax increase.
Okay, thank you very much. I see a lot of hands up now. Trying to figure out who's next. I think it's Councillor Bauer, then Peterson.
Thank you, Worship. So my question just goes, and I think that our CAO did answer it, that we would need to have a 0.35% tax increase in order to find the money for this, or we would need to dip into reserves. I just want clarification.
I think he also said there could be funds depending on how the tax roll turns out later this spring. There could be funds found. I'm not sure exactly. Maybe its expenditures may not be as high. Maybe there's more Mr. Legore.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the short answer to Councillor Bauer's question is yes, confirmation that it would either be a slight tax increase or a reserve transfer. However, when we put the budget together, it's based on an assumption of what the assessment will be. When you finalize the assessment roll, it may be slightly higher because we're always quite conservative with our estimate. So there may be a little bit of additional funding through that. So when we set the mill rate, that's when you determine what your actual assessment is and what type of tax revenue you need. And that's when we'll know for sure whether or not you would need a small tax increase.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you,
just trying to process this in my mind, and I'm looking at all of the different ways that this council has supported our residents with, utility bills, fees being waived in terms of penalties. We have supported small businesses, waiving the small business permits. We've, continued to look at ways to really help people cope financially. And I'm just wondering what our public's going to think if we were to look at a tax increase to support this. I completely believe what Councillor Sobel has said about cats running amok in this community would be a big issue. And I know that we haven't had to deal with that because of Michelle and Barb's commitment to cats over the last 14 years. I just don't know about the timing of this. So I'm really struggling with this, and I guess I'll go with my gut. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. I have Councillor Peterson. I think everyone's probably spoken twice by now. So Councillor Peterson, and then I'm going to call the vote. If that's.
I just have a quick question, Your Worship, about clarification to the CAO. So a tax increase if we give the money, but also, Your Worship, if Happy Cat isn't here, we still have to build $40,000 to $50,000 into the budget. Am I correct on that, CAO Legore?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes. I'm not going to confirm the number as 35 to 50, but there is no question the town will incur a cost if we do not fund Happy Cat Sanctuary. Yes.
And so can I infer from that the amount is within $10,000, probably commensurate with the numbers that we ran in 2017?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's probably a fair statement.
Thank you.
Thank you. The only comment I'm going to make, I haven't really said too much, but I just think that with the feral cat population alone, it could be a huge problem for Strathmore residents if we don't fund Happy Cat. And the cost that we've already talked about, if the town has to take on all these duties again, then we've undone a lot of the good progress we've made in the last 3 years. So I'm in favor of this. I believe we'll find the funds somehow. And I believe the compromise is to not commit to a 3-year financial plan of this nature, but get them through this year so that we can probably find ways to brainstorm on ways to make a new format acceptable. Okay, I have Councillor Montgomery.
Thank you. So back when we agreed to do this funding arrangement, I had made a suggestion at that time that when people come in to register their cats for licenses, that they be given the opportunity to make a donation to the Happy Cat. And I was just wondering, if we have any idea how much that has kind of directed to them.
Barbara Michelle, no?
Sorry, I don't think that was ever, we remember you saying that because we've talked about it, but I don't think that was ever put into practice because we haven't got any money from that as well. So that would be a good donation strategy as well.
And maybe that's,
okay.
Maybe again, that's a strategy we can try to put in now as we look at next year, 2022, 2023 funding. So I'm going to call the motion if everyone's okay. We have still an incredible amount to get through tonight. So we have a motion on the floor. Does anyone need to hear that motion again? No? Okay, so I'm going to call the motion. All in favor of the motion put forward by Councillor Sobel? And opposed? So we have a 3-3 tie, which means the motion is defeated.
Your worship, I have a motion.
Okay, Councillor Montgomery?
I will move, so I will move that the town enter into a funding arrangement with the Happy Cat for this year in the amount of $36,500. And that is based on our previous agreement of $33,000 plus a 2.5% increase for the last 3 years. So that puts it at about $36,400. So I'll say $36,500.
So that's $500 less than. Well, it is $500 less than the motion by Councillor Sobel because his was taking into account we've already committed $11,000 to them. Is that correct? I think that is correct, isn't it?
No, Your Worship. According to CAO Lagore, that $11,000 was not committed by council.
I thought it was. That's what Barb had said.
Yeah, but
okay. So we had budgeted for $11,000.
We have $11,000 in the budget right now. That's
$11,000 is in the budget right now for them. So your motion of $48,000 would mean that we're sponsoring them or paying them $37,000. And I just want to clarify, Councillor Montgomery's is $36,500. Is that correct?
All included, yeah.
Okay. So we have a new motion on the floor for $36,500. And is there any further discussion on Councillor Montgomery's motion? Councillor Sobel.
Thank you. So my question is for Barb or Michelle. So would this, what effect would this have on the Happy Cat Sanctuary? So it'll be, if this passes, this is $11,000 less than you asked for.
Well, I guess we based our proposal on the same time frame that you did it last time. So we're getting the $11,000 for the first few months of this year. So then if we get the $37,000, then we would be committed till the end of December.
Well, I think we need clarification.
You'll only get the 26. You'll only get another 26, Barb.
I think is that correct, Councillor Montgomery? Your motion would be $26,500 in addition to the $11,000 already budgeted?
I guess so. It would be an additional $25,500 plus 11, so $36,500 altogether.
Okay, so the total will be $36,500. So Barb, is that clear for you and Michelle? It would be at $26,500.
So an increase of $3,500 over last year.
So that includes the $11,000 that we've already been promised.
Yes.
We could, because of the investment account that we have, we could operate another year with that funding, but at that time, we would have to close down if there's not extra funding available for us.
Okay, thank you. I have Mr. Lagore now.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, this will provide funding to December 31st. I recommend that we start talking about this early in the fall of 2021 as to how we handle the Happy Cat Sanctuary going into 2022 so that they know before they get to the first of the year where they're going to be operating from.
Okay, Councillor, Mr. Lagore.
Sorry, just one other thing I could add, Mr. Mayor. When we get into setting the mill rate, if we find we have the funds, Council could reconsider giving the additional funding at that time to take it up to the $48,000.
Okay, thank you very much. So we have a motion on the floor from Councillor Montgomery. Does anyone need to hear that one again? Seeing that we don't, I guess, I will call the motion. All in favor? And opposed? And the motion is carried 4-2. Thank you, ladies, for your time, and thank you for all your volunteering and work with this organization. We know your efforts are doing an incredible job as far as keeping down the feral cat population. So thank you. And Michelle, make sure you say hi to Vaughn for me.
I will. He'll love that. Thank you so much, everyone.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you so much, everyone. Take care.
Deputy Mayor
Thank you for everything.
You're welcome. Good night.
Good night.
Deputy
Your
Mayor
Worship,
Fox?
I am going to make Councillor Montgomery's motion to extend the meeting till 10:30.
Thank you. So we have, you're sorry, I lost you for a second. Are you encouraging him or are you doing the motion? I missed that.
No, motion.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion to extend the meeting to 10:30, much to the horror of many here. All in favor? And that motion is carried. That brings us to policy number 7205. Jennifer, were you waving to me? Okay. All right, we have Mark Pretzlaff, who's been here a long time waiting. Policy number 7205, recreational use of Strathmore and Kinsman Lakes, which is on page 59. Oh, sorry. That's true. I have the Happy Gang lease extension. I went one below that. Sorry. Welcome, Mark.
Thank you, Worship and Council. As per the report in front of you, the lease agreement with the Happy Gang Society is set to expire on at the beginning of March, and beginning of April. And as per the existing lease agreement, a 5-year option is available for extension, and providing it's in writing by all parties involved. As per the report, the draft addendum has been circulated to the Happy Gang Society, and they have given verbal approval and are willing to sign, and now it's presented to council for their consideration. So if there's any questions from council, I'm now prepared to answer them.
There's no way the Happy Cat and Happy Gang could merge and...
I don't believe you so,
You know,
Your
I'm
Worship.
thinking collaboration. Okay, sorry, Councillor Bauer. I'm getting a little punch drunk.
Oh my. Okay, thank you, Worship. Thank you, Mark, for presenting this to us. And I just have a couple questions. With regards to the renovations of the building of Lambert, the Lambert Center, did Happy Gang contribute to the renovation? And did the library contribute to the renovation?
Through the chair, I'm not exactly familiar with that. It was happened actually before my time, but I believe that majority of that funding came from grants, from a grant program.
So the library did not raise funds to for the renovation then?
I can speak to part of that, Your Worship.
Okay, thank you.
Just very briefly, Councillor Bauer, I know that they received a New Horizons grant to do the carpet. That's the only part that I know regarding the renovation.
So the town was responsible for most of that cost? Okay. The other question I have, Mr. Pretzlaff, is who pays for the utilities for the Happy Gang? And then do you have any letters of support from the library saying that the Happy Gang are good neighbors?
Through the chair, as per the lease agreement, 16% of utilities are costs borne to the Happy Gang Society. As for letters of support from the library, I don't have anything in front of me at this time, but my understanding, the relationship with the library and the Happy Gang Society is very mutual. With the additions of, or the renovations that existed in 2017 to give them their own space and their own washrooms, it's been very harmonious, and there's been no issues with between either of the parties.
So they are truly a happy gang. Thank you.
Nice one. Thank you. Any other comments or questions, Councillor Peterson?
I just have a question for Mr. Pretzlaff, Your Worship, and that is, I've had seniors advisory in the past, and I don't think they've had any conversation, because it was between the two times when Councillor Cox was sitting on senior advisory, or Deputy Mayor Cox. I know that there was some conversation from the seniors advisory saying that they were really hopeful that they could work out some meeting arrangements as a meeting place for seniors and to utilize the Happy Gang. But I don't know if there's any way to work that out, or if there's any capacity to do that going forward. I certainly support them having the space. I think it's great, but I don't know. I don't know about the level of inclusion or the capacity of that group to work with others. And I don't even know if I have a question, just if they've talked to you about that at all. Thank you.
Through the chair, Councillor Peterson, I'm not aware of any conversations specifically to myself. The programming at the Happy Gang is, whether it's yoga or dancing, is in one of their meeting rooms. The other space is dedicated to 3 or 4 pool tables. So yeah, I'm not aware of any conversations. They haven't brought anything to my attention, but I'd be glad to forward it on to the Happy Gang Society if so be it.
I think it would be really wonderful, Mark, if we knew, because I know it's not utilized all the time, and I'm sure Councillor Bauer and Councillor Montgomery would say that the library probably could utilize it when it wasn't being used. I don't know if that's a possibility, but if we could look at the utilization rate and then look at maximizing it, I think that would be wonderful. But I leave that in your very capable hands. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Peterson. Deputy Mayor Cox, and then back to Councillor Bauer.
Thank you, Your Worship. I echo what Councillor Peterson has asked. I do recall a very valid question as to whether the Happy Gang was inclusive of all people, or if they had a membership requirement or any of that. And I'm totally not in discouraging this lease to continue, but I do think that we need to maybe put some parameters on their new lease agreement. That's it. Thank you.
Could I ask you, Deputy Mayor Cox, do you have specific things you'd like to see added to a lease agreement for the Happy Gang?
Well, more specifically to, as Councillor Peterson has said, whether or not it can be utilized better, and if we could get some information on their, like, who uses the Happy Gang, basically, and or the actual Strathmore Happy Gang is made up of who, and are they exclusive? Is there a membership, or can anyone be part of it? It sits well in our, inclusion, and we should, start there.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that clarification. I'll go now to Councillor Montgomery.
Thank you. Question for Mark. Who owns the furniture and whatnot, like say those pool tables? Are those owned by the Happy Gang?
Through the chair, it's my understanding that all the belongings within the Happy Gang Society the Happy Gang building belong to the society. In terms of membership, the only thing that I'm aware of is that there's an annual membership fee of, I think, $2 or something like that. So anybody can become a member within their age criteria, as long as they pay their $2 membership fee.
Thank you. So I guess, like, from that perspective, it could cause issues trying to get them to share the space if there's their belongings in there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Montgomery. So at this time, are any of the councillors prepared to make a motion? Or are you looking for more information? Councillor Sobel?
I'm ready with a motion, Your Worship. I move that council approve the lease extension addendum to the 2017 Happy Gang lease agreement.
Thank you very much. We have a motion on the floor. Is there any discussion? Councillor Montgomery?
I'm just wondering if there's appetite for to take a look at the parameters and expectations for this lease agreement before we approve it. There's not really a rush to complete this, as it's about a year out from renewal. I support renewing the lease. I want to hear from council, I guess, as to whether or not they would rather work out some details of the lease first. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Montgomery. I think Mark can speak to that.
Through the chair, this current lease, 5-year lease agreement ends on March 31st, 2021. So that gives us approximately 14 days before this lease is up. This current 5-year term is up for renewal.
Isn't it a 5-year lease that was signed in 2017?
Yeah, so my understanding is, I'm reading the agreement right in front of me, this lease, through the chair, the term of this lease shall be a period of 5 years commencing the first day of March 2017 and ending on March 31st, 2021, with an option for renewal for an additional 5 years in written agreement from both parties.
So
my math is off. I think that's 4 years, isn't it?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. No, that's 5 years.
2017 to 21 is 4 years.
I think if you're counting 17 like that, the rest, it could be March to March. So 21 to 22 or 2017. Let me take my shoes off.
Do you remember, Councillor Montgomery, when we signed this lease, we were already a year into it too, right? We signed it late. Remember, we'd forgotten to sign it and it came late so I think that's probably where the confusion came in.
Okay. I thought maybe my internal calculator was broken or something.
Thank you for that. So, Councillor Bauer, you're speaking to Councillor Sobel's motion?
Yes, I'm just not prepared at this time, Your Worship, to approve a lease extension of 5 years. I would like more information. I'd like to hear from the Happy Gang, whether or not how many members they have, whether or not the space is being used, what types of activities they're doing there, whether or not they would entertain sharing the space. There's just some questions, but I mean, in the interest of time, I certainly would approve, a 6 month or a year if we need to do that. But the 5 year with this much information, I'm just thinking that I just need a little bit more, please. Thank you.
Councillor Bauer, if I could come back to you, are you asking Councillor Sobel if he'd make a change to his motion to not do the full 5 years, to maybe do a 6 month agreement for 6 month lease?
Well, if I'm hearing from Councillor Cox and Councillor Montgomery, I mean, there's certainly suggestions that have been put on the floor that, we could ask Happy Gang to come back and just provide us with a few more answers. If Councillor Sobel is willing to do that, that would be absolutely great. Thank you.
Councillor Sobel?
I'm not. Okay. No, Your Worship, I like a vote on this. The fact is, everybody is supportive of this, but they want more information. They want to speak to the Happy Gang, and nothing will stop us from inviting the Happy Gang to, if the answers that the Happy Gang is going to provide is going to change change our actions on whether or not we supply them with an extension, and then I can understand. But everybody's been supportive. I'd like to go ahead with the motion and move this along, Your Worship.
Thank you. And I guess if I could weigh in, I think it would be my own feeling is it would show some goodwill on our part that we approve their lease, but we're also asking that maybe they can revisit and look at some new approaches to their use of that space in the building. So maybe that's something to consider too. Deputy Mayor Cox.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just briefly, I'm not in any way, shape, or form wanting to kick out the Happy Gang, so I don't have a problem with the extension of the lease. I just have a problem with maybe we could revisit and reword the lease agreement itself. It is 5 years old. It probably does need some new clarification and maybe some extra terms.
Thank you for that. Are you speaking to the motion, to Councillor Peterson?
I just wanted to ask, that's a good idea. I never considered that, Councillor or Deputy Mayor Cox. So to Mark, is it possible to include in the lease, just like do the 5 year lease, but to include in the lease a utilization, as Councillor Montgomery suggested, a utilization agreement of some kind?
Through the chair, Councillor Peterson, my suspicion is that if we choose not, if it's chosen that we do not renew this lease, then we should look into signing a brand new one entirely. As we have this condition in here that both parties must agree to an extension. If we are not in agreement to that, or if they're not, then we should look into signing a new lease at that point.
So there is nothing around reporting utilization rates or anything like that in the agreement?
There is not.
I just know from sitting at that seniors table, and like I said, when Deputy Mayor Cox was the representative on the seniors advisory committee, I can't remember who the chair was in. It might have been Ethel. I think it was her, Miss Bertram, that on behalf of them, they did say in one of those seniors coffee meetings that they would really, really like to utilize that space, but hadn't been allowed. And so I don't know about whether that is a possibility or it isn't a possibility, but I'd sure like to look into it to see if we could get better utilization of the space. And I would be happy to go on a month-to-month lease, whatever, until we could understand what is, because I think it would be useful.
Thank you, Councillor Peterson. So, Deputy Mayor Cox, did you want to speak again? Thank you.
So just for clarification, Your Worship, are we saying we can't change the lease? We have to we have to agree to the exact same lease we had 5 years ago? We can't alter a lease agreement? So it has to be 10 years old by the time it gets altered?
Mr. Legore.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if you want to alter this lease, you're going to have to basically do a new lease and have both parties come to the table and agree to the conditions of it. If you want to defer this and direct administration to come up with a new lease, we can do that. But there is a motion on the floor.
Thank you. We do have a motion on the floor, and I guess I will call the motion. All in favor? And opposed? So the motion is defeated, and I would imagine then we direct administration to bring the two groups together to look at a new lease.
To you, Mr. Mayor, there should be a motion to direct administration.
Okay, thank you.
I will move that council direct administration to enter into negotiations for a new lease with the Happy Gang.
Thank you, Councillor Montgomery. We have that motion on the floor. Is there discussion on any part of Councillor Montgomery's motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? And it is carried 5-1. Thank you very much, Mark. Now, Council, I'm quite concerned that with the weight of this agenda and the bylaw on the conversion therapy bylaw, that we don't have enough time to do it justice with any possible amendments. I want to make sure we do right by the LGBTQ2 community as well as the people who have spoken tonight. So I'm wondering how Council would feel about a motion to bring this back to the Committee of the Whole meeting with a possible vote on a potential bylaw on April 21st. Councillor Montgomery, your hand went up real fast.
Yeah, I was planning on basically moving that, so I'll move that council direct administration to bring the conversion therapy bylaw back for review at a Committee of the Whole meeting in the near future. And if council would like to suggest amendments for that as well.
Thank you.
And if you need me to fix that, I can fix that.
Thank you. Do you need the motion to also say it'll come back for decision on April 21st, Jen?
Your Worship, that's up to council on whether or not, on how fast they want to move on the bylaw. I definitely recommend that council discuss that bylaw further at a Committee of the Whole meeting in a more informal setting, and then bring it back to a regular council meeting to make decision on.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. And Councillor Montgomery, thank you for making that motion. I want to make sure that, I think we all agree, we want to make sure we do the right thing here in Strathmore, come up with something good for our community. Just before I go to you, Councillor Peterson, Jennifer, just as far as a direction to administration, I think that's going to be quite a weighty issue. So if we could try to have a fairly light agenda on that committee of the whole date, that would be great. Councillor Peterson, you're up now.
I just want to make sure that we have Colette's comments, Your Worship. That's all.
Sorry, you what?
That we have the comments from the presenter, from Colette.
Okay.
Because thank you.
Jennifer?
Your Worship, we did receive them and we will distribute them to council for the committee of the whole meeting.
Okay, thank you. So we have a motion on the floor to defer this discussion to committee of the whole in April, and then it would potentially come back to April 21st for a decision. I'll call the question. All in favor? Thank you. Thank you. That motion is carried unanimously. And thank you, Council. I think we've made a really good decision on that part because we do want to do a good job on it. Deputy Mayor Cox.
Your Worship, while we're at it, could we also defer bylaw number 2107, the offsite levy bylaw? It was extremely lengthy and I have a lot of questions and I don't think we're going to get there.
Thank you. I'll turn to Jim for his comments.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The bylaw is brought forward as first reading, which is really not up for debate. But the process will be to just present it to you tonight without discussion. We would then advertise it twice in the newspaper, 2 weeks in the newspaper, and collect comments back from whoever wishes to comment. And we were planning on bringing it back to April 7th for second and third reading, or at least second reading anyhow.
So perhaps we could see how we do on the rest of the things, and as we get closer to this agenda item tonight, we can see if we do need to defer it. We can see if we have time to, and if there's no discussion or questions on your presentation, then it would come back to us after that 2-week period. So maybe we could just see how we're doing on this agenda and then revisit this. All right, we go to policy number 7205. This is deja vu for me. Recreational use of Strathmore and Kinsman Lakes. And this is Mr. Salvatore. Welcome back.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. I just have a struggle here with this podium. Thanks. I stand before you this evening able to say that we've had some very good conversations within the various departments, in particular Community and Protective Services and Infrastructure, Operations and Development, regarding the use of storm ponds in Strathmore. And we understand that there's a long history in Strathmore of using, in particular, Strathmore and Kinsman Lakes for recreational purposes. However, there has been a gap over the period of history for a guiding policy that would provide us with an opportunity to manage these activities and as well provide staff with direction on the type of process that they must follow in order to deal with the types of uses that we would consider to be most common. So in your report, essentially you've got quite a package of information that outlines various storm ponds in relation to the stormwater infrastructure of the town of Strathmore. Mr. Wilson and Mr. Simpson were wonderful in contributing their thoughts, as well as our operations staff, on what the practical side of delivering this kind of programming would be on the operation for the town. And essentially, what we've got for you is a way to use stormwater ponds solely and limited to Strathmore and Kinsman's Lakes, and we've got a number of uses that we've outlined within the policy. In particular, you've got fishing is one of those activities in the summer, in addition to non-motorized boating, including those that require no contact to the water itself. There is concern about the quality of the water in stormwater ponds, and so for one of the reasons why things like stand-up paddleboarding and kayaking is prohibited under this policy is to alleviate any health concerns that could be a result of that contact with the water itself. In the winter, we do advise a program of regular checking, as we currently do, to see the quality and thickness of the ice in order to ensure that there's a safety factor in place to ensure staff can use, or pardon me, the public can use these surfaces quite frequently. Really, that encapsulates a great deal of the work that we've had amongst many different parts of the organization in anticipation of your comments as well and support for moving this forward. So thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you very much, Mr. Salvatore. Questions, Councillor Montgomery?
Thank you, Worship. So I have a few questions. One is, if am I understanding it correctly, so under the purpose, number 1.4, it says to restrict the recreational use of any other stormwater pond in the town of Strathmore. So are we essentially prohibiting, somebody from going out on like the wetlands, for instance, and clearing a spot off and then skating on there, since that's a stormwater pond?
Exactly right, Your Worship. The purpose of this is to designate Strathmore and Kinsman Lakes as the two areas that have approved policies in place in order for those recreational activities. And they're twofold there, I guess. On the one hand, it then limits the amount of resources that staff have to contribute in terms of monitoring, but also in terms of maintenance of those surfaces. So we would not recommend any additional use, and that all recreational uses be directed to solely Strathmore and Kinsman Lakes.
Okay. Yeah, I don't particularly support that myself. And then another question I have is, why would we list prohibited uses rather than just recommending that people avoid contact with the water? We say that, for instance, canoes are allowed, but then we say that, you can't have a kayak. If you've ever been canoeing with somebody, you might know it's pretty easy to tip a canoe in the water. And since we have a clause in the policy that basically, says that we're not responsible for anybody's, any risks or anybody's use of the, even if it's a permitted use, why wouldn't we just, make a recommendation? I guess I'll just say this. I couldn't support this unless it was a recommendation basically to avoid water. I don't think that we should be saying, if you have this type of boat, then, you can go out there. And if you have this type of boat, you can't. And then I have a question about, is there, I noticed that there's a spot in the policy that allows for, the use of a snow blower, for instance, but I didn't see anything that allows for somebody to bring a shovel out and to clear the ice themselves with a shovel. Is that an oversight, or do we actually just not want people to bring a shovel out and clear it?
Thanks for your question, Councillor Montgomery. One of the reasons why we list prohibited uses is in terms of any restrictions that we want to apply to the lakes. That will enable our staff to enforce those rules and take action accordingly. On the other side of your question, if you wouldn't mind just repeating that, I'd like to respond to that as well.
Just with the snow shoveling?
Yeah. There should be a section here that does provide an allowance for any person to maintain the surface at their own discretion. Using a shovel is one of those ways of doing that, and it should appear in the policy. So I'm sorry if I'm not able to direct you to it right at this moment. But yeah, we do have. I'm trying to think exactly where it is in the policy. We've sort of gone through several iterations of this, and we certainly did have 3.8, where we identify maintenance of stormwater ponds that users may assume responsibility for snow debris removal, but to do so at their own risk. So that would include the use of a shovel or snow blower, and it's just appears there in the maintenance of stormwater pond section of the policy. So I believe it's covered there further to your question.
Well, it just says, so if number 3.310 says vehicles are not permitted on the ice, small push model snow blowers are allowed if in good repair. Any other ice clearing activities must be approved in writing by the CAO. So
Yes.
that's the only part it mentions, like actual clearing of the ice, which is why I was wondering. It didn't seem to permit shoveling.
Yeah, and I think, Your Worship, the section in 3.8 really covers that off. What we're saying there is we want to prevent the public from bringing a motor vehicle on the ice or any other tractor or vehicle that could be heavy enough to damage the surface and cause an incident that would cause them to go through the ice. So that's why we just limit the size to a small hand push snowblower.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Montgomery. Councillor Sobel?
Thank you, Your Worship. The most important lesson that I've learned from the discussion surrounding this issue is that storm ponds, be they wet or dry, have an important function in our communities. Having said that, not all storm ponds are created equal. Dry storm ponds are strategically located in order to mitigate flooding, especially in the springtime. The purpose of these lands must remain the priority. However, the question arises, is it possible to continue to respect the purpose of a dry pond and to have risk mitigated to the extent that it's possible for a community group to create and care for a small skating area? I believe the answer is yes, and appreciate that administration left that possibility open by including sections 3.5 and 3.6 in the policy. The ultimate decision is being left where it should with the CAO and or the Director of Infrastructure, Operations and Development Services, who can calculate risk and ensure the dry pond will continue to be available for the purpose for which it was created. This is a thoughtful and effective policy, and I'm happy to support it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Peterson.
So Councillor Sobel just left me with two tiny questions. The first one just is one of clarification on 3.3.4. A kayak would be allowed, am I correct? Because it is propelled solely by human power?
I believe, Your Worship, kayaks are actually identified as a restricted use in the policy. One of the reasons for that is, and I know I had the same question myself, Councillor Peterson, that if you're someone like myself, trying to get in a kayak requires that you need to get in the water, and it's more likely that you're going to find yourself in that water by taking it that way. A canoe is perhaps a little bit more stable in terms of the use, although I do recognize Councillor Montgomery's comments about how water could be spread around there, but it is identified as well as stand-up paddle boards as a restricted activity in this policy.
I've seen people with much better agility than me go into kayaks off of docks with great ease. I just wondered.
Yeah,
it's not enough to keep me from voting for this. The other one is on 3.3.8 that ice fishing is not permitted. So we do catch and release in the summer, but not ice fishing in the winter. And just in the past, ice fishing has not been a big thing on Kinsman Lake for sure, but it has been a greatly, hugely supported fun activity sponsored by FCSS in the wintertime from time to time. So I was surprised to see it here. It must be a reason, but I don't know what it is.
Yeah. Thank you, Your Worship, and your question, Councillor Peterson. One of the reasons we wanted to restrict ice fishing on the surface was just to ensure that the integrity of the ice would last throughout the winter, and every time you put a hole in the ice, you really don't know whether or not that ice is going to come back and be as strong. We didn't want to create a hazard by doing that, and if we do have skating and other ice activities available on those surfaces, we wanted to make sure that we were not creating an additional hazard by allowing ice fishing.
But if the FCSS wanted to do it, they could rope off a little area and they could still do it under 3.5, correct?
Well, I guess the comment, Your Worship, would be the special permission is still possible through the Director of Infrastructure and the CAO. And there can be exceptions that are made in certain situations through this policy. And I believe in that sense, it's flexible enough to serve the town of Strathmore for quite a number of years.
And then finally, Mr. Salvatore, this gives opportunity for people to actually start a business to cater to this great recreational activity in our community. Am I correct? If they wanted to rent canoes and such things?
Or paddle boats.
Or paddle boats.
Through you, Your Worship, I won't speculate what kind of business opportunities might be available here, but certainly it does make it possible for approved uses to take place on Strathmore and Kinsman Lakes. And I think that's a very positive thing for the people of Strathmore and area.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I have Councillor Bauer and then back to Councillor Sobel.
Your Worship, I'm ready to make a motion.
Thank you.
I move that Council adopt policy number 7205, recreational use of Strathmore and Kinsman Lakes as presented.
Thank you. We have a motion on the floor. Is there any further discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed?
Aye.
Opposed? So we have 5-1 in favor. Thank you. The motion carries. Mr. Salvatore, before I lose you, I have the name of that model sailboat club. It's the Calgary Model Sailing Association. They have a Facebook page, so you could become an excited member. And they have come to like Strathmore Lakes so much, they would like to host provincials here and possibly work towards having nationals here.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. And I was pleased to make sure that we had that flexibility in the policy as we presented it to you.
Perfect, because they come here each Sunday afternoon and each Thursday evening now. Who knew? All right, thank you very much. We move along to 9.5, heavy item garbage, HIG services. My wife's trying to put some stickers on me at different times to get rid of me. Thank you and welcome, Ethan.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. I'm going to skip the short presentation portion in the effort of saving some time here. So the HIG program has been in place for many years. Currently, we service the town with 5 pickups throughout the year. That's January, April, July, September, and November. There was one exception, that was April 2020 due to COVID. It was skipped. As we've gone through the last 3 years, we've seen fairly consistent tonnage and usage of the HIG program. In an effort to remain sustainable for the community through our landfill and fiscally, we want to propose reducing 5 collections down to 2 per year. We understand that this may put a burden on some people, and we don't foresee this overall being a reason that we wouldn't continue our HIG program. We want to keep it with 2. But we also want to introduce a trash to treasure program. The idea of this is that we give the opportunity to the public to go through what other people would consider trash and use it for their own use. This would limit our impact on the landfill throughout the year, and it would also impact our costs for HIGs, which ideally would be a reduction. There is the possibility that going from 5 to 2 means we still have the same tonnage throughout the year, that just each pickup is a larger amount, and overall throughout the year things don't change that way. But we do foresee that less opportunity will mean less tonnage, and then also with this trash to treasure program would be less tonnage. The proposal would be that this trash to treasure program would be the days preceding the HIG week. So for example, if HIG is Monday to Friday of a week, the trash to treasure would be, say, the Thursday to Friday through Sunday preceding. If, say, somebody was not wanting their items to be picked, they could just choose to not put their items out until the Monday of the HIG week. By doing this, we are aligning with the town sustainability policy and our municipal operations procedure. We do have our environmental policy 8100 and the subsequent operations policy 8100-01. So with that, I'd happy to take any questions that council may have.
Thank you, Ethan, for your presentation. Councillor Sobel?
Thank you, Your Worship. Couple of quick comments. I took advantage of the ability to contact administration this week with a couple of questions in this regard. One was whether or not the waste management recycle center would continue to have take it or leave it, which is a good way to get some of these items out of the HIG, and I was assured that it's here to stay. And the other one was whether or not HIG would continue to limit to 5 items, and the answer to that was no. That limit would come off. So I'm happy to hear that. The trash to treasure. I should tell you, Ethan, based on history and the amount of items that have gone missing from my front yard for the last few years, a lot of people are already practicing trash to treasure. So I'm happy to see that in there and have it advertised. I think it's a great program. And lastly, my only question: do you know if Waste Management will continue the annual Christmas tree pickup, which was kind of like an HIG?
Your Worship, through the chair, we don't foresee the HIG change affecting the Christmas tree program.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Sobel. I have Councillor Bauer, followed by Councillor Montgomery.
Thank you, Worship. I'm ready for a motion. I move that Council approve the revised heavy item garbage schedule to 2 per year, April and September, with the addition of the Trash to Treasure program.
Thank you for your motion. Councillor Montgomery, did you want to speak to that motion, or did you have a question?
Both, actually. So one question I have for Ethan is who currently gets the revenue from when people bring garbage to the recycling yard, and they can dump it in those dumpsters there? Who gets that $40, let's call it?
Your Worship, through the chair, Councillor Montgomery, that charge is given directly to Waste Management. The town does not collect anything on that.
Okay. And then the other question I have is, well, this is, I guess, speculation somewhat, but so if in theory we're directing people who, maybe somebody would have, put something out on HIG, but instead they, end up bringing it to the recycling yard, isn't that going to possibly cost us more because we pay more per ton for stuff that gets brought to the recycling yard?
Your Worship, through the chair, the items that were brought to the recycling yard as garbage are still disposed of as garbage. So it would still be the same disposal rate.
Okay. And honestly, I think, if the revenue from the people bringing stuff to the recycling yard was going to the town, I would, find it easier, I guess, to support that. I personally would rather go to about 3. I would rather not go less than 3, to be honest. I think one of the great things about living in Strathmore is the HIG days. I think that's a good bonus for living here. But I personally wouldn't want to go less than 3. Thank you.
Thank you. And if I could follow up on that, Ethan, did you folks consider 3 as opposed to 2 in a year?
There was discussion early on whether 3 or 2 was the right number. I think the suggestion is that we start with 2, evaluate it, and if we see that 2 is not sufficient, then we revise to 3.
Okay, thank you. Jim?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. We did discuss it. We found in other communities a lot of other communities are using it twice a year very successfully. People do get adjusted to it, and they know when it's coming. We advertise it, we promote it, and we just feel it's an opportunity to save a few more dollars by cutting it down to 2 and still providing, we think, a very good service to our residents. Thank you.
Thank you. And my own experience, I had a whole living room suite set up on my front lawn by grade 12 guys who went all through the town on heavy item garbage week. And I awoke to a living room suite of crappy furniture on my front lawn. All right, I will call the motion. Councillor Lorraine Bauer has a motion on the floor, and I'll call the motion. All in favor? And Councillor Bauer? Are you in favor? I can't see you or hear you. Okay, and opposed? Thank you. So we have 5 in favor and 1 opposed. The motion carries. Thank you very much, everyone. That brings us to proclamation of the Day of International Day for the Elimination of Racial Discrimination, page 81. And welcome, Jeff. Welcome back.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Very quick report. This came off of a comment that Councillor Sobel had asked us to follow up on. We've prepared a proclamation. It is a proclamation that's shared around the world. This came from another member of the CMRB, so I think that it's worthy for council to consider this, that it's coming from across the region.
Thank you very much, Jeff. Are there any questions for Jeff and Councillor Peterson?
I'm ready with a motion, Your Worship.
Thank you.
That council proclaim March 21st as the International Day for the Elimination of Racial Discrimination in Strathmore.
Thank you for that motion. You've all heard the motion. All in favor? And the motion is carried. That brings us, thank you, Jeff. That brings us to committee reports. That was a quick in and out. There we go. 10.1, reports from councillors from committees on which they sit, March 17th, 2021. And I think a lot of you have seen the reports that have come to us in our agenda packages. Is anyone presenting anything tonight as far as councillor reports? Councillor Sobel?
Just ready with a motion, Your Worship.
Thank you.
I move that council accept the committee reports for information.
Thank you for that motion. You've all heard the motion. All in favor? And that motion is carried. Which brings us to item 11.1, fiber in Strathmore. That's from me, page 95. And the discussion was this on trying to bring fiber to the community. And am I allowed to do this? Do I have to turn the chair over? Okay, Deputy Mayor Cox, may I turn the chair over to you so that I can make a motion?
Absolutely.
Okay, so Your Worship, I would like to direct that I move that council direct administration to draft a report regarding the possibility of installation of fiber optic internet for Strathmore residents. And I won't be speaking to that motion other than what I've presented to you in my notice of motion.
Thank you. Does anyone have any comments or questions? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? That motion is carried.
Now, will you be turning back the chair to me?
Now I will turn back the chair to you, Your Worship. Carry on.
Wasn't sure that would happen. All right, that brings us to 11.2, notice of motion, statutory declaration, Councillor Corbeil, page 97. And she unfortunately is not able to be with us tonight. What's that?
Do you want to read it into the record, Your Worship?
Do we need to read that? There's no debate, no reading of it? Okay, thank you very much. That brings us to notice of motion, policy procedure, unbudgeted projects, proposals coming from Councillor Montgomery. Councillor Montgomery?
Thank you very much, Your Worship.
Sorry, I guess we also don't need to do anything because you're just giving us a notice that the motion is coming to us in the next public meeting.
Yeah, I'd like to just read it out if you don't mind.
Okay.
No, we don't. It's fine.
Sorry, what?
We don't need to have it read, but do you want to read it? Is that what you're saying?
No, it's fine. I can wait.
Okay. Thank you. I'm confused, but thank you. That brings us to 12.1 bylaws. Bylaw number 21-08, land use bylaw amendment bylaw, Lakewood duplexes direct control, page 99. And we've had a presentation on this in the public hearing. Deputy Mayor Cox. Oh, sorry, Councillor Chuck Proctor is going to present one last time and may be able to answer a couple of questions if you have them, and then I'll go to councillors.
Well, thanks, everybody. We had a public hearing this evening talking about a direct control district in Lakewood, which changes 5 lots so that we can accommodate duplex development on these lots. I'm happy to answer any questions if council has any. Thank you.
Do any of councillors have any questions for Chuck? No? Then we're looking at motions, I believe. Deputy Mayor Cox, followed by Councillor Bauer.
Thank you, Your Worship. I move that council gives second reading to bylaw number 21-08, land use bylaw amendment bylaw, Lakewood duplexes direct control district.
Thank you very much for your motion for second reading. And now that we have a motion for second reading, we can entertain further discussion. Is there any discussion on that motion for second reading? Seeing none, then I'll call the motion. All in favor? And that motion carries. Councillor Bauer.
I move that council give third and final reading to bylaw number 21-08, land use bylaw amendment bylaw, Lakewood duplexes direct control district.
And thank you for that motion, Councillor Bauer. I'll call the motion. All in favor? And that motion is carried. Councillor Montgomery, I don't see you, but I do now. Are you in favor, Councillor? Thank you. We have a unanimous consent for that. Thank you very much. 12.2, bylaw number 21-13, land use bylaw amendment, addition of home occupation use to the R3 district. Chuck, are you speaking to this?
Thank you, Your Worship and members of council. Just very briefly, this stemmed from an inquiry from a resident to add home occupations to the high-density district in Strathmore. We've provided a good report there for you with some pros and cons of this amendment, and we have a recommendation for first reading tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I'm looking for a motion for first reading, and then it would be referred in the second motion to a public hearing. Councillor Sobel.
Your Worship, I move that council give first reading to bylaw number 21-13, land use bylaw amendment bylaw, home occupation inclusion to R3 district, and that council schedule a public hearing for bylaw number 21-13 on April 21st, 2021.
Thank you for your motions. You've all heard the motions. All in favor? And the motion is carried. Item 12.4, bylaw number 21-06, Parks and Pathways bylaw amendment bylaw on page 167. Mr. Salvatore, welcome back.
Thank you, Your Worship. Speaking to the amendment to the Parks and Pathways bylaw, simply enables us to allow 24-hour access to users of pathways within the parkway system. In the previous, the standing bylaw currently does not allow for this, and by making this amendment, it will provide access as well over an extended time frame. I believe taking this approach also provides and recognizes that the people of Strathmore should have access to pathways around the clock as an essential pedestrian part of our foot traffic network in the town of Strathmore. And that's essentially what we've got before you here today, Your Worship. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Are there any questions for Paul regarding this? Then I'm looking for a motion for first reading.
I will move that council give first reading to bylaw number 21-06, Parks and Pathways bylaw amendment bylaw.
Thank you for that motion, Councillor Montgomery. All in favor? Councillor Peterson?
I move that council gives second reading to bylaw number 21-06, Parks and Pathways bylaw amendment bylaw.
Thank you for that motion. And now that we have a motion for second reading, we can entertain discussion. Does anyone have any comments that they would like to make? Seeing none, all in favor? And that motion is carried. Councillor Bauer?
I move that council give unanimous consent to a third and final reading of bylaw number 21-06, Parks and Pathways bylaw amendment bylaw.
And thank you for that motion. All in favor? And the motion is carried. Deputy Mayor Cox.
Your Worship, I move that Council give third and final reading to bylaw number 2106, Parks and Pathways Amendment Bylaw.
Thank you for that motion, Deputy Mayor. All in favor? And the motion is carried, which brings us to 12.5, bylaw number 21-04, Municipal Solid Waste Services Bylaw on page 171. Welcome, Ethan. Thank you. Welcome back.
Thanks for having me. Your Worship and Council, I'll make this one quick. Bylaw 2104 is brought before you today as a replacement to Bylaw 1716, previously referred to as the Waste Management Bylaw. Material changes of this bylaw are limited. Some highlights of what has been changed is the name of the bylaw. Having a bylaw named Waste Management Bylaw and our waste services provider being the company Waste Management was confusing. We provide consistent reference to associated bylaws and policies which have changed since the last time this bylaw was updated. We're including concise penalties and associated fees that are consistent with surrounding municipalities. We've provided adjustments in the process to align with communities of similar demographics. We have removed some operational items that were previously within the bylaw, and we are also updating the acceptable items for disposal so that they are accurate to what we currently accept today. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Questions? Councillor Montgomery.
I'll ask a question and then I have a motion prepared, I believe. Ethan, does this need to be passed today or can it wait like a month?
Your Worship, through the chair, if it had to wait, it could.
Okay, thank you. I will move that Council direct administration to bring this back at a future committee of the whole for further discussion.
Thank you.
I have a bunch of questions about it.
Did you want to speak to your motion then too, Councillor Montgomery? Did you want to speak to that motion?
Well, as I said, like I have a number of things I'd like to, I guess, discuss relative to this bylaw, and so I would rather not kind of bog things down tonight.
Okay, thank you very much for that. So we have a motion to put this off to a later meeting. All in favor? And that motion is carried. Thank you, everyone. And that brings us to 12.6, bylaw number 21-07, off-site levy bylaw, which I believe is a first reading, but you're going to give us a brief report. Is that true, Ethan?
Yes, Your Worship. I think I have enough time to give you a brief overview of how the bylaw has been put together so that first reading can be given. All right, thank you, Your Worship and Council. I am here tonight for first reading of bylaw 2107, offsite levies bylaw, which is an update to our current one. As previously noted in the committee of the whole when this was presented, we are going to suggest that we move to a benefiting area approach for both simplicity in calculation and also proper assessment of levies on each area to make sure that development within an area is only paying for the levies for which are applicable to them. The proposed levy rates that I've brought to you today are used in order to stay competitive in the market. We are proposing a 30% supplement on both water and transportation levies. These rates are equal in all areas and therefore the supplement would be equal to all areas. We're not providing a benefit that's greater in one area versus the other. As you can see, this would be a levy of $159,000 and change in the Northeast, $168,000 and change in the Northwest, and $113,000 and change in the South. Those rates are all per hectare of development. In comparison to our current levies, you can see that this would be an increase of 18% and 22% in both the Northeast and the Northwest respectively, while it would be an actual decrease of 11% in the South. This decrease in the South is believed to be a way that we can help spur commercial and industrial development in that area, and as we know, more businesses likely means more residents, so could have a benefit in all areas. To give you an idea of where this would put us in comparison to other communities, these levies would keep us competitive with our neighbors while still being lower than the maximum levy of Chestermere, and of course lower than those larger municipalities such as Okotoks, Airdrie, Cochrane, and Calgary. To be clear on what the 30% supplement on water and transportation would be, we've done a quick sample project. So if we had a 400 millimeter distribution main with a cost of about $2.5 million, if we did that through the proposed rates that were provided in the ISL report, that would be 100% funded through offsite levies. Bylaw 2107 is coming to you with 70% fund through offsite levies and 30% supplement through some other form. This would mean about $1.7 million of the project would be paid for through offsite levies, but the town would have to come up with about $760,000 from other sources. Other sources could be taxes, utility levies, borrowing, grants, any other form we so choose. Payment terms is the other major change. We're proposing that we go to terms where we get 30% due at the agreement, 30% due at CCC or 2 years, and 40% due at FAC. The benefit of this is the flexibility in payment for developers, which is spread over 3 years, guaranteed cash flow for the town upon the execution of a development agreement. Levies are paid in full by the time the town takes over the asset, being FAC stage, and the risk of unpaid levies are reduced substantially. Currently, rates are deferred until a building permit is provided on the lot, and that could mean levies remain unpaid for many years, sometimes much more than the 3 that we're proposing now. Next steps, I'm asking for first reading tonight to allow this to continue to move forward. Advertising period is required to be 2 weeks. We would then come back for second and potentially third reading on April 7th, and then we would be into the implementation phase. So with that, I'm hoping to get first reading tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So Council, if you're all comfortable, we're just looking for first reading tonight, and then they'll advertise for 2 weeks and collect more information from developers. Councillor Peterson?
Your Worship, I would move that Council give first reading to bylaw 21-07 off-site levy bylaw.
Thank you for the motion. You've all heard the motion. All in favor? And opposed? So it's 5-1, passed. Thank you very much. We have no urgent business. That brings us to 14.1. Councillor Sobel, yours is a comment you have, and I believe you said that it might be time sensitive.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I'm quite pleased to see the COVID-19 vaccination rollout proceeding at an expedited speed in our province, and certainly appreciate the vast majority of Albertans want a vaccination and want it as quickly as possible. I'm also aware that priorities for vaccinations are necessary, and for the most part, I am supportive. I am not, however, able to support the government's failure to recognize firefighters as a group that should and must be considered for early and immediate vaccination. We are well aware that in January, the Government of Alberta announced that paramedics and some other classes of emergency medical personnel were identified as eligible recipients of the vaccine during the Phase 1A rollout. I think we can all agree that it's proper and fitting that emergency responders who have a high likelihood of coming into contact with the virus should be protected. However, it is concerning that our municipal fire department are not included in this group, especially since they often assume the position of emergency responders and are frequently at motor vehicle collisions, residences, and senior care facilities before another emergency service attends. In fact, although not designated as emergency medical responders, they are categorized as emergency service responders, thus ineligible for Phase 1 vaccinations. Often they respond to calls where there is no advanced warning that COVID-19 may be present. Our firefighters are at grave risk of contacting the virus, and the risk to our community, as well as to our neighbors, will increase if sufficient firefighters have to go into isolation and leave our department short of trained personnel. I feel it is incumbent upon this council to ensure the province's premier, health minister, and provincial medical officer of health, as well as the provincial MLA representing our community, be made aware of the fact that there continues to be concern over a potential lack of firefighters in Strathmore due to contact with COVID-19. It should be emphasized that this could be mitigated by having them included in the Phase 2A vaccine rollout. With that, Your Worship, I have a motion, and I move that correspondence be forwarded to Premier Kenney, Minister Tyler Shandro, Dr. Dina Hinshaw, and Minister Leela Ahir, expressing this council's concern in this matter and emphasizing the need to have Strathmore firefighters included in the Phase 2 vaccinations.
Thank you very much for your comments and your motion. And Mr. Legore?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, a question to Councillor Sobel. Would he consider a friendly amendment to include the AUMA and the RMA in that letter?
Oh, absolutely, certainly. I'd accept that. AUMA and RMA, absolutely.
Thank you very much, Mr. Legore. So
And I'll send that motion to Jen in 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you very much. You've all heard the motion. I'll call the question. All in favor?
I have a question.
Oh, you have a question. Okay.
Yeah. So like and forgive me if you already mentioned this, but are police, I guess, already vaccinated? Like if first responders have been vaccinated? My understanding, if I may, Your Worship, my understanding is that they've been designated to move up in the vaccination process. I'm sorry, I'm not exactly sure to what point that they're being moved up to. But I understood that peace officers had been prioritized closer to a vaccination period than they were. But there's been no movement on the firefighters. They are, at this point, they are actually the last ones who will receive vaccination. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Montgomery, and thank you, Councillor Sobel. Councillor Bauer?
Thank you, Your Worship. When Councillor Sobel says that the firefighters are the last to receive the vaccinations, does that include other frontline workers like grocery people and teachers and other health professionals like doctors and dentists?
I don't know. I'm not sure.
I just have a real issue. I don't know when this is going to stop. Like, I don't know how we can say one group is more important than another when all of them deal with seniors. And I don't know how this council can weigh, firefighters more than the dentists who are putting their hands in people's mouths every day. And so I'd like to hear Councillor Sobel's rationale.
Just before I do that, Mr. Legore has a comment, and then I'll go to Councillor Sobel.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, healthcare workers, all the health profession is prioritized before firefighters. Firefighters are first responders and are the first ones there at many medical calls. There has been a lobby or a letter writing from many municipalities across the province trying to encourage Dr. Hinshaw and the Premier to prioritize firefighters because of their severe risk that could leave communities without any fire protection.
Oh, okay.
Does that help, Councillor Bauer?
Definitely. That really helps. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Sobel, you probably you may not have to speak if everyone's satisfied with Mr. Legore's comments.
Well, yeah, and that's one of the main points is our municipality safety, which would not happen with a dentist but I mean the health people are being looked at. They're a priority. I mean, everybody's a priority, but firemen are actually dealing at scenes with people who have COVID that they do not know have COVID, and yes, they have PPE and precautions are taken, but I'm telling you that they're first on these scenes.
Thank you very much. I believe we now have a minute until 10:30.
Good.
Councillor Peterson?
I'm sorry, Your Worship, but I just wanted to point out that CTV did a fantastic report on this. And one of the things that I really remember from this, they stressed that firefighters and on-call firefighters don't have the option to socially distance or avoid contact with the people that they're providing assistance to. And then that's what could lead to that, to their own personal disaster, but also to what Councillor or CAO Legore stated. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you very much. I'll call the question. All in favor? And that motion is carried.
Thank you.
Administrative inquiries, do we have time or do we add them to the next one? It's 10:30, so I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
Your Worship, if I might, I just have one quick motion, and that is I would like to direct administration to collect donations on behalf of the Happy Cat Sanctuary when people renew their cat licenses.
Okay. Is there any discussion on that motion? I hope not. Oh, boy. I don't think we can go on anymore. I believe we're at 10:31 now. And I believe we have to end now. So Councillor Montgomery, could you bring, sorry, Councillor Montgomery, could you bring that back to the very next meeting?
If you guys are, I guess, are against voting for it, but
I don't believe it. I don't believe it's that.
It's not like that.
No, it's not that.
It's just we've gone beyond the time.
Yeah, it's just, yeah, that's fine. I'll move we adjourn. I was disappointed to hear that administration hadn't acted on that, I guess, for the past few years. So, and I wanted to make up the difference for the happy cat that they weren't getting from us. But I'll move that we adjourn the meeting.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion to adjourn at 10:32. All in favor? And we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Good night.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.